The views and opinions expressed on the Pier 6 Roundtable are those of the hosts, guests and callers, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, its management, other hosts or underwriters. Listen at your own risk.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our main event of the evening. A Pier 6 brawl with a 1-hour time limit. And now, here is the undisputed, true voice of pro wrestling in New England, the Pier 6 Wrestling Roundtable.
Wonderful!
You listen to me, you go to the top. Don't listen to me, you're never heard from again.
Ha ha! Delete! Delete!
Oh my.
Delete! Oh, kiss your boots if you can do it! But to be the man, you gotta beat the man!
And what's he gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world destroy you?
Jabroni, and it's awesome.
Woo! So anyway, let's get into the show itself, because you know, while some people do tune in to hear us ramble on, that's not the main group of people listening. You are tuned to bsrlive.com on the internets. Brown Student Community Radio, serving the curious listener. So, as we said a few minutes ago, we have referee Jack Hill in studio. So we have sort of a way we get into our conversations and about wrestling, if you've just tuned in. And so what we like to do is we like looking back at most of the people who get involved in wrestling. There are some, they're guys who are bodybuilders, or they're a three-sport athlete who didn't have awareness of wrestling and they get recruited into it. But the majority of us who get involved in the wrestling business is because there was some point in our life where we're either stumbled upon an event or we're turning the channels and what the hell is this and why is it awesome? So what was that initial moment for you, Jack, when who was it? Like what wrestler, what was it?
It started probably back when I was about 8 years old. I was over my father's house, and this is probably the only good thing my father's probably done. But he introduced me to wrestling, and he put me in front of the TV. He says, okay, I'll be back in a couple minutes. And I remember the first match was Hogan against he had like a handicap match against two guys. And ever since that day, I was absolutely hooked. Just had to watch it every Saturday.
It was Hogan.
Years after years after years, and then, and it just got to the point where it was just like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
I got to do it. And I didn't want to be the police officer. I didn't want to be the firefighter. I wanted to be a professional wrestler. So years went by. I used to collect the wrestling books from way, way back. And inside there was a book by Precious Paul Ellering, How to Get into the World of Professional Wrestling. So I ordered it. And in back of it had a list of all the schools in the country. And there was tons of them back then. And the first one that I got out to was Adrian Street down in Florida.
Skull Crushers, right?
Skull Crushers, exactly. I sent them a letter. Back then we had to send letters. We didn't have email.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks later, I get the letter. He sent me all the information, and I was just like, I'm going. I just, something ended up happening where I didn't end up going. And then I noticed Killer Kowalski had a listing in there as well, which I then sent him a letter. He got back to me a couple weeks later. Just got the balls just to drive out to Malden, Mass, into the school, and met him, and rest was history, I guess, from there.
Funny thing about the Adrian Street thing, again, much like everybody, I initially found his information. We didn't have the internet.
No.
I mean, this was I got started in it was '92,
yep.
And I was going through the magazines and Skull Crushers Wrestling.
Yep.
Write to us for a free catalog.
Yeah.
So I did.
I still have the catalog to this day.
I have a box of stuff that
I still have the letter that he wrote. I still have the letter from Kowalski's his response letter. I have it all away.
That's awesome. Yeah. I remember specifically when I first went from the whole I got to get gear. Like
Yeah,
I had gear that I put together. Like, you know, at the time you go to a sporting goods store and buy it, and I was doing an all-American gimmick, so I got a red, white, and blue singlet. And, but I wanted to get custom.
Liberty.
Yeah, but I wanted to get custom stuff done, and that was the first place I got it done.
Yeah, that's what he specialized in.
And so I hand wrote him the letter and what I wanted and the measurements, and like I had questions. I spoke with him. You know, you call the phone, and this woman, it was Miss Linda, the woman who was his valet, and you know, the British accent, and then let you talk to Adrian, and he comes. And you're like, I watched this guy. What this? So you're like, you know, your first year in the business, you're trying not to geek out that you're talking to a guy who's drawn money.
Yeah,
but So, but then it leads you to Killer Kowalski.
Yeah, it led me to Kowalski, who I mean, to this day, you mentioned Kowalski, and everybody's just, he's the best trainer that ever came out of.
And a true, I mean, when you talk about a legend, I mean, he was one of the first really. I mean, you have guys like Ernie Ladd, Killer Kowalski, the guys who were the first giant, physically imposing guys, and he had that whole real sadistic kind of character, being killer, the Killer Kowalski. So what was you? So you send it, you get the letter.
So I get the letter, and then I didn't have a car back then, so a friend of mine, who we were both wrestling heads, he bought a car. And then he drove me down there to Malden, Mass. And I remember walking up those crickety back steps of his school, walking in. And the first person I seen was Killer sitting in his chair right in front of the ring. And I remember standing there, and I was so nervous. I mean, like, it's Killer Kowalski. This guy's a legend. And I remember him just kind of like leaning over to me, and he just kind of like glazed at us, and then he went back and he just sat in his chair. We stood there for about 20 minutes and nothing. There was a couple guys in the ring doing some work. Then finally he got up and took me into his office, and he explained everything. That's how much it costs. This is what we expect from you. He says, we usually around here, we give you about 6 months to see how you do, and we'll tell you whether or not, this is cut out for you. Luckily, I made the cut. And then I just, started training. Did that for maybe about a year and a half before he put me on my first match in Southbridge in 1998, 97.
Imagine that, a year and a half. A year and a half. The guys now are getting trained and put on shows in some capacity within a month of learning how to take a bump.
He can kind of bump.
A year and a half.
He made it specific, like, I am not going to put you in the ring unless I know you're ready.
Yeah. And he had you had his name on you. So
exactly.
You were coming out of the Killer Kowalski
I was coming
school.
out of Kowalski school, and he didn't want a bad rap of people coming out there looking like garbage. And
there would be a flock of guys soon thereafter, and they may have been guys that you saw during your time who would come in for a cup of coffee and then wouldn't cut it. Then they would start working indies and call themselves Kowalski guys.
Yeah. There's a ton of them around still to this day
absolutely.
who are training other people and saying that they're Kowalski guy. Like, oh, God. If this was our show from a few years ago, I would have just named them all by name and just completely leveled them all. But I won't. You can just do the math.
We're hashtag woke now.
Yeah. Yep.
So who was was it? So at this point, Killer is actually still doing the majority of the training, but was Mike Hollow
Mike Hollow was there. He trained me a lot. Steve King, he was there as well. Steve King, those guys were just awesome.
And his wife, Violet Flame.
Yep, she was there. Perry Saturn taught me a lot of stuff. He was awesome. I remember a little story, if I can get into it with him.
This is your time, man. Please do.
I'll never forget. I was probably 4 or 5 months into my training, and I remember him pulling me into the ring. He says, all right, we're just going to do a little shoot match. We'll just go over it, and we'll call it on the fly. I said, okay. So I remember we lock up. He throws me in, and he gives me this clothesline. It knocked me. Like, I was like, oh my God, what is this guy doing to me? He picks me up, punches me, chops me, knocked my tooth out.
Wow.
He clotheslined me so high, I thought he shattered my nose.
Ugh.
And this probably lasted like 5 minutes, but it felt like it lasted like 2 hours because he was just beating the crap out of me. And I go rolling out of the ring, and I'm sitting in the chair, and I'm wiping the tooth out of my mouth. And he comes up to me, and he taps me on the shoulder. He says, "If I see you Tuesday, I know you're for real." This was on a Saturday. So I said, okay. So I come back Tuesday, pulls me in the ring. Ever since that day, he was light as a feather. He taught me so much.
Man.
Yeah. Light as a feather.
He was a technician.
Oh man, he was just. I tell that story to everybody. Yeah, it cost me a tooth in the knee, but it was worth it because I'm learning from Perry Saturn and John Cronus.
Yeah.
China was there at the time. Triple H just left to go to WCW.
Yep.
So I seen him maybe once, trained there, but there was a lot of good guys that came out of that school.
Yeah,
Slick
absolutely.
Wagner Brown was there. Bo Douglas.
April Hunter, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
Really?
She was near the end of it. She was.
Yeah, I thought she was there with Slick.
Yeah, but it was really like when Slick was doing the training at that point. That wasn't. She was there during Mike Hollow's days, definitely.
Dillinger, was he there, or DC Dillinger?
They were.
Was he later too?
Yeah,
They
that
were
was
slick.
more towards the end.
Him and Eddie Edwards were Slick guys.
Yeah.
And Benny Jerks, those were guys like when the school's getting ready to close down.
But like Dillinger and Edwards had they had a couple when so it was still the school in Malden, and it was it was a good couple years that because it was like Hollow had done like when Killer wasn't able to physically do it in ring full time. That's when Mike went from like assistant to head trainer, and then when he left to go to Chaotic, that was when he left and then Slick took over for like the last year and a half. But there was some crossover because I know Dillinger and Coach Hollow didn't get along very well. Yeah. I heard the epic rants, but it's again, it's like you said, a ton of great people came through there. Yeah. So you were there around the time like Tony Roy,
yeah.
And there was tons of faces went through that. Where along the lines was so John Walters, would he have come through around then? At like towards he was the early 2000s.
I think.
Because he was definitely one of Hollow's guys.
Yeah, he was definitely a Hollow guy, but I don't remember offhand. I can't recall.
I just remember that when Kowalski would send his students. So I used to do shows for Sylvana Souza, and he would run shows out like the Wilmington Shriner, and there'd be like. You go in and there'd be 2,500 people, and there'd be like the battle royal. All right, we need you in the battle royal. Like, no problem, thank you. And you get there, and they're like, oh, we got a bunch of Kowalski's guys, and there'd just be like one guy after the other. Just all looked like John Walters 2, Boston Brawler, like all the and they're just one guy after the other. All these, but they were all like super sound. You get in the battle royal, and just even the battle royal, like all right, these guys are brand new, but they knew their stuff. Yeah. But it was always like the guys who weren't Kowalski guys, and then there'd be at the time the line of the Kowalski guys, and they just all had that same like intense look, and until you knew them, and you're like, these guys look like they want to tear your head off, like in the back. Then you get in the ring, and they're all good dudes. But no, so what was your actual first match then in ring? Did you like
in my first?
Well, that was you said Southbridge,
Mass. It was '97. It was. I remember during the winter, my first match was a tag match. I teamed up with the Outpatient, Jeremy. Yeah, and
big dude.
We worked Mike Hollow and Scotty Too Hotty at the time.
Well, there you go, Scott Taylor. Yeah. Talk about a great first match to guys to work with. Two guys who can totally take care of you and lead you through a match. Yeah.
So that was my very first match.
And were you wrestling as Jack Hill, or what was the?
It was actually Jack Star at the time.
Jack Star.
Yeah.
One R or two?
One R.
One R.
And I had a big star right on the back of my butt. It said Jack with the star on it. Was.
Well, at least you had custom gear. Too.
I had custom gear. Yeah, I still got it. I still got it to this day.
I
keep everything. I collect everything.
One more match. You got to wrestle me somewhere.
I'm for it. Absolutely, man. Let's set something
we got another
up.
Rich Bass referee.
Yeah,
once a year. Once a year, I like to bust it out.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I remember Adrian.
We'll set it up.
Street, because that's the gear. Did you get that gear from him too?
No, I got my gear from. What was the name? Why do I want to say High Spots?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It was out of Ohio. This place.
Oh.
High Spot. I don't think they were around yet.
No,
was it K&H?
K&H. There you go. K&H.
Wow.
I got my boots from there, and I got my gear from there. Yes, K&H.
I remember when I first started, and the guys that I were hanging out with, they would get their gear from Adrian Street through eBay, right? Because he had an eBay store.
Did he really? after a while.
His name would pop up, and Ricard would always buy like.
Oh, lots of his spare.
Oh,
like
tons
of
stuff, extra
gear.
Yeah, like tons of extra gear made by Adrian Street, but you were buying it from
Adrian Street.
It
was his, yeah.
And just like so, all these guys coming up, Pat Masters and Mike Bennett, and all these guys would have this like just thrown together gear and boots that Steve Ricard would sell them basically out of the back of his truck. Like, here you go, everybody. But it was.
But
it
what
was
a great
good,
like
custom, almost custom.
Well, handmade.
Gear.
It was definitely handmade.
Yeah. Yep. So Adrian Street just rang a bell.
But like the difference
gear wise,
like Adrian's stuff was always made with like it was like just plain like spandex, like it was versus like the K&H stuff was that nylon spandex,
heavy,
like
thick.
You weren't gonna blow a seam out in one of theirs, like whereas
absolutely
you know
not,
you wrestled your first match in Adrian Street stuff and you had a crotch blowout and had to like sew it up the next night.
No, not this stuff.
But no, K&H was like, and you get that stuff with they do that they did like a heavy like nylon spandex. It was like you could probably block a knife with it. It was like awesome. Yeah, they made great gear.
Kevlar.
Yeah. But they were
Kevlar gear.
But they were also very plain in what they did. Like they wouldn't like singlets as you know them now. When you see guys getting like the singlets that have like the biker length legs, they didn't do those. They only did the butchers, which were like the King Kong Bundy cut, right up the crotch. So K&H Wrestling, and then you got your boots from them and everything.
I got my boots.
Yeah,
I still have everything to this day.
Damn,
I still have everything.
And how long we're gonna jump ahead. How long was it between where you stopped wrestling and then you decided I'm coming back and I'm ref? How many years was that?
Man, 12.
So
13 years maybe.
So to still have the boots and everything, after I'm like I've been out of the ring for like 2 years or a year and a half or whatever it is. Oh, this summer will be 2 years, and I'm like already looking at like how can I sell my boots?
No, I've never even. I mean, it's so sentimental to me. I just it's just.
I'm like, rip the Band-Aid off, I don't even, the whole guys get, maybe I want to have one more match. Like, you in quotes retired from something you never made a dime in, and then, I can't say that I never made a dime in it, but you get guys who just, I'm retiring from wrestling. Dude, the biggest venue you ever wrestled was a VFW hall that drew 75 people. How are you retiring? And then they'll come back in a year. I'm coming back for one more match.
That's how it always is. There's no such thing as retiring.
Yeah, no. But all right, so you have that. First of all, I mean that's awesome to think that you're wrestling Mike Hollow and Scott Taylor. Those are guys, and you guys are the heels in that. If you're with Outpatient, so the people in Southbridge, those are two guys, Mike Hollow and Scott Taylor. They're seeing them every Saturday morning. Yeah. When the WWE comes through town, those are the guys that are doing enhancements. Like that's how I knew of Scott when I saw Scott at like going to Yankee Pro and Scott Taylor's wrestling there or. Those were all the enhancement guys. Yep. So you're seeing, I mean, you're wrestling, and it's not as big of a deal because you're training with these guys at Kowalski's, but, I mean, your first match is with guys who have national TV time. Yeah. So, I mean, talk about, like, a great – so who are some of the other guys? So you brought up Outpatient who, I mean, again, I haven't seen Jeremy in a bunch of years, but I know Jeremy. And who are some of the other guys who, like, were there other guys who were in your kind of training class that might still be around, or were you kind of like one of the few? Because that happens. You get guys. Sometimes you get a class where like 3 or 4 guys will survive and be like guys, or you can have a class with 40 people and one guy makes it through.
Yeah. Well, right now, Bo Douglas is still doing it with his school. Yeah. Slick, Jason Rumble. He does. I don't know too much, but he does the UFO shows.
Yeah, he's kind of on a rec low. There was a time where Jay was all over the country.
Yeah, he was everywhere.
Yeah.
It's. I don't really see too many of the other guys. Yeah. Just them.
Was Trooper Gilmore trained up there too, or no?
No.
Kowalski?
No.
I don't think
so. Troop started with the NEWA. He was doing that for a while, and then he ended up. They needed a job guy for Tony Rumble, and he went up there, and basically it was like. They wanted a local job guy for Abdullah the Butcher. And Abdullah was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And Jimmy was like, sure. Yeah. And at that point, but the thing is, to Jimmy's credit, as limited at the time as he was, like even like super limited at the time, and as limited as his training was at the time, he went up there and was asked to do this, this, and this, and he said, yes, sir. And Abdullah beat the piss out of him. I mean, the chair shots were, but after, from what I mean, because Jimmy then from that point on had a role with Tony Rumble from then on. Yeah. And I think the word has it that Abdullah went back and told, hey, I like that kid. He's a good kid. You know, he listened. He did exactly what I wanted. Never questioned a thing. And at that point, Tony Rumble was one of those guys where if you did good by him, he was loyal. He was, you know, one of those guys who was, you know, loyal to a fault. So, you know, that so for Jimmy, that worked out for him. And for me, where I tried to be loyal to Eugenio and it screwed me over, and I never got to work for him except for my, you know, first show. So, yeah, that's
Think about all the guys that happened. To
the whole
you can't work anywhere else if you work for Eugenio thing, and that was from,
I can't tell you not to work for them, but I can tell you that I don't have to book you.
And the thing is that's spanned well over a decade of Yankee Pro guys not being able to work anywhere else, because you were going through that almost 10 years before I started going through that of you can't work anywhere else. Which now, thinking about it in today's modern culture of independent wrestling, to tell an independent worker who you might not even be paying anything, if at all, that you can't work somewhere else, that's insane. And the fact that people have missed out on opportunities because of that is the worst part.
My mindset as a young green kid was, at this point, I had 2 years with the NEWA at the time, which was, you know, they ran shows sporadically. It was meh quality in many cases, unless you were wrestling somebody you were comfortable with, like, you know, Bad Boy Billy Black, Jose Perez, guys like that. We could have great matches, but then we weren't getting paid either. And we were doing it for the love of it, brother. How many times have you heard that? But then we get to Eugenio's, and my first year with him, we did 100 shows. Every weekend, you're doing double shots pretty much, other than the holidays. I mean, it's 2 shows a weekend, and he was paying us a minimum, even for the, you know, the, in quotes, house shows where he didn't, like, fall over at PAL. My first 2 years there, until we fell out with Joe's favor, Kyle and I got paid on every show we did, minimum $30. So, I mean, again, if you're a kid who went from 2 years of not getting paid, the minimum paydays are $30, and you got some shows where you're making $50, $7,500. You know, I mean, it was legit. So, you know, you can kind of see, you don't want to, well, you know, if he tells me that, you know, I don't know. But then he didn't hold the same standard. You had guys like the Power Company and Rick Fuller who are like, no, we're going to wrestle where we want. And, of course, and then all of a sudden they're getting brought down to be job guys or TV. And, I mean, in Rick's case, he wasn't a job guy. He was a TV guy through Kevin Sullivan, you know, and that was all stuff that was through Tony Rumble. So by saying, no, we're going to stay loyal, not realizing that would screw us, you know, we could have been like, easily been job guys in Atlanta, because it wasn't like you didn't have to be a body guy then. You know, you could totally be a regular looking guy in gear and know your stuff, and you'd be on WCW Saturday night, or, you know, whatever. So let's go back to
Rick Fuller. He was so scary.
I loved when he ever chopped Lex. I mean, we talked about the Tony Atlas time.
His chops were
on Monday Night Raw,
shotguns,
and when he was on the not Raw, on Nitro, the night he debuted on Nitro, he had kayfabed everybody except for Joe Pavo. Joe Pavo knew that he was going to be on, and of course Joe Pavo's phone rang off the hook when it happened, because everybody's watching. This is when Nitro, everybody's watching, and all of a sudden, you know, and his opponent, big Rick Fuller, we're like, what?
Yeah.
And he backs Luger into the corner and just puts that one chop, and Luger's face just. It was the same face that King Kong Bundy made when Sky King chopped him that we talked about last week. You know, just that. Oh,
yeah, but man, the balls to go into the WCW your first night, you back one of their top 3 guys into the corner and chop the living crap out of him. That's fantastic. Yeah. If that's not a testament to Rick Fuller just not giving a crap about anybody but himself, in the best of ways possible. Am I saying that, by the way? I don't mean that in like an ass kind of way.
That's like you're in jail. You walk up to the biggest, baddest guy in jail, and you punch him right in his face to establish that, hey, I'm not going to be a pansy.
I'm there to make money and like be a top guy. So that's awesome. I love it.
So let's go. So who are some of your favorite guys to actually wrestle when you start off? Of the guys the guys who were local. Obviously, your first match, you had a couple great ones. But who are some of your like local guys who you were working with on those shows that you enjoyed wrestling?
Me and Bo had some good matches. We
That's
did a
not
lot.
True. Bo's never had a good match in his life.
Bo knows bad
Just
wrestling.
kidding, Bo. You're the man.
Everybody loves
See
Bo.
if I can remember. I'm so bad with names. Slick was good. We had a bunch of matches. Who else? I got to wrestle Snuka. That was like off the wing. You know, I was just like up at Maine.
Was he the first in quotes like legendary name that you wrestled?
Yeah, he was, and I didn't even know it was going to happen until like 30 seconds. I guess his opponent was supposed to be there. He never showed up. What? So it was for Atlas out in up in Maine.
Oh, yeah.
That was when he was booking maybe EWA in Maine?
I believe so, yes. He just says, oh, man, I don't know where he is. Jack, just go ahead, go out first. And I'm like, I'm wrestling Snuka. So we just kind of like it was like, it only lasted like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But, I got a little bit over on him, and then he just came out, headbutt, boom, splash, done.
So
it was.
Can't ask him
so when you're in the ring and you're the first one out there, and then Jim, you had to have had that. Oh, this is awesome.
Exactly, because I didn't have time to process it.
Yeah.
Usually, who you're working with, when you first get to the building, all right, you got to work this way. It was just like on the fly. All right, 30 seconds, get out there, and do what you got to do.
Yeah,
and that was pretty.
And
cool.
and like I feel it's unfortunate that whatever rumor and innuendo that comes up about that trial, and in his late days, and then when they said that he was too far gone cognitively to even be tried, but. Talk about a sweetheart of a guy. I mean,
like he was just so nice.
Like he was. We've talked about it on the show before. He was one of those guys that you could see him once every like 4 or 5 months, on shows, and they come through the loop and do. But he would see you, and as soon as he saw you, he made you feel like if whether he did remember you or not, he was like, "Hey, brother, how are you?" Big, huge bear hug, just the nicest guy. Like when we started doing shows where we had Snuka. Originally, we were doing a deal where we were bringing a small Rottweiler pup to the ring with us. It was pretty cool. We were doing a tag deal, and the Rottweiler, we were working with this manager who we were the baby faces. And what we would do is backstage, he had a towel that he'd do like the terrible towel thing to annoy the baby faces. So backstage, we'd annoy the dog with it. The dog would love it. He's wagging his tail. He's playing tug of war. But what we'd do is then when he got in the ring, he'd been playing with it for like 10 minutes. Then we get in the ring, and the manager would have the towel hanging out of his pocket. And he'd walk by, and the dog would go at the towel.
Nice.
So we'd set it up. But, man, Snuka was hey, brother, that's a good-looking dog. And, like, then Snuka's on the floor. This puppy's, like, maybe 5 months old. And Snuka's rolling around on the floor with the puppy. I mean, it ended up being, like, Kyle's brother-in-law's dog. But it was just the coolest thing, like, this is Jimmy Snuka, and like he's more interested in hanging out with us and playing with the dog than like worrying about the match that he had. It was, good stuff. It's like I always think it's just unfortunate that might be like what people last remember about him. That that whole incident that may or may not have happened.
But the thing is, if it did happen, then those good memories almost don't deserve to be had because that's who he is. Yeah. In reality, that's what he may have done. Yeah. Like. And that sucks because to me, I can't look past that about somebody. Like if you've done something really bad like that, maybe you were a good person at one point, but that just supersedes it. Like you did something really horrible. I can't look past that.
Right.
Like,
and then you wonder, like, if it did happen, and I don't want to go too, but like this, it would have happened at the time where like he would have been at the height of his steroid use. Snuka was jacked. And Snuka was jacked.
He was so big.
WWF used to go to the Worcester Memorial Auditorium. Every Thursday.
Yeah.
And my mother would take me down, and finally she was able to get front row seats. I'll never forget it. Sitting in front row, Jimmy Snuka against Rick Quick Draw McGraw.
Yeah.
That's way
awesome.
Back. Those two were working, and Snuka was biting his forehead, busted him open, and after he did that, the hair was wild, and I remember him just looking at me in the front row, like, and I'm like, this guy absolutely scared the crap out of me. Like,
that's the thing.
And then here he is, years later, I'm in the ring with him, and it was just like
we tend to remember Snuka as the babyface Snuka, but he had a great run as like a heel.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was like him and Albano and like making people bleed the way you said, biting their heads open, and then it just is. I'll never forget it. It's like once he flipped, in my mind. Once he flipped to be that babyface role, there was a good, even though Hogan was like the guy, when they wanted to pop attendance, it was Snuka and Andre. Those were two, like, you'd either all right, we're going to send Andre through to pop the territory, or we'll put Snuka in a main event. And just putting those on those days, just that name, Jimmy Snuka's coming back to Providence, you'd sell out the Civic Center just on that, because those were the guys that were so You know, it was before you had 3 or 4 guys who were those big. Now it's like the entire card comes through every time, and and you're used to that. Like, you're going to see all the top stars. But back then it was like, you had a lot of undercard filler matches, and you'd have 2 or 3 matches. I mean, they used to sell it out with, like, the first show I was at was I've said Roddy Piper wrestling Tito Santana for the IC title. Well, obviously with Piper having passed, but if you had said that 15 years ago, you'd be like, oh, that's like, it's going to draw 300 people at an indie card.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a packed Civic Center, or Dunkin' Donuts Center. So you're at this point you're wrestling. You're doing. How long do you end up? So you said you took 12 years off. So how long was it that you actually, from first match to last match, how long was that you wrestled before you took time off?
So it was about 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
What were some of the companies that you were wrestling for?
Oh man, I don't even know if I can remember. I know it was Atlas up in Maine.
Yeah.
Rocky Raymond.
Yeah.
Did some matches for him.
Good old Rocky Raymond. Checks in the mail, brother.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that check.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. Well, whatever.
You're still waiting for your check.
I'm still waiting. He told me. I just texted him the other day. He said,
good. He must have forgot to put a stamp on it.
Bert Centeno. Remember Bert Centeno? Did a lot of stuff out in Worcester for him.
We know Bert Centeno.
We know him very well.
Much joy has come to our lives through Bert Centeno. Bumper doesn't even know it, but yeah.
I haven't. I'm sorry.
See, as I said, we've loved Bert Centeno for years, and we've had this one joke, and like just the name comes up, and Rich is in tears. We've had like
tell me.
It's just the name, Bert Centeno.
Yeah. If you say his first name like it's a fart,
Centeno. And it's one of those things on a late night drives. One of us did it once. We were talking about different guys, and we were coming up with just different names, and that was
Centeno.
Yeah.
Yep. Good old Roberto Centeno.
Yeah. So and El Mascarado.
Yeah.
Many times I've had to work El Mascarado.
I remember when
I'm gonna put you on a headlock. I'm gonna shoot off. I'm gonna do the international. But this time, instead of me taking the head, you're gonna do the hip toss on me. We're gonna switch it up.
when he brought a yellow like luchador gimmick to one of Rocky Raymond's shows, and Rocky Raymond had the bright idea to stick Scott Levesque inside of this human banana costume, basically is what it was, and put a mask on him, and he was like Yellow Tiger or some like ridiculous thing. So,
Los Hammock Bananos.
Yeah, so he would have another luchador to wrestle Bert, but Bert was like 50 and is already like 50 years old or something, wrestling Scott Levesque, who's not like a luchador by any means. In this yellow human banana costume.
Remember when they would do it with BK Jordan in Fall River? For a while, BK was like, they had him as a luchador, and it was like straight from the movie Nacho Libre. And
Carlos something, yeah.
And like they made it like it was a big deal. Like here he comes in like this. He's straight up here from Mexico, and you go, and it's like that's BK.
Yeah,
Jordan.
that's classic top rope. Like having the Max Moon costume and the La Parka costume, and just putting Teddy Goods inside the La Parka costume and saying that you have La Parka booked.
But it was a better La Parka than La Parka USA.
Oh god.
So all right, so it was about 9 years you're doing those shows. So what ended up being the reason that you stopped wrestling?
I was just getting hurt left and right. I shattered my elbow during a match, which put me out for about a year and a half.
Oh yeah, that's.
Came back, did a couple shows, and it just kind of wasn't the same. It was just like, I don't want to say the love wasn't there. It's just, it's like, am I really going to be able to take it to the next level? Probably not. So I finished out the little shows that I had left, and I just, put it away.
Yeah.
I guess.
So you said there's a 12-year layover. So what is it that suddenly no more Jack Starr, but you've joined the Zebras?
Just like anything, I guess I just got the itch again. Just one day, I was just like, man, I want to do this again, but I don't want to do the wrestling. I don't want to take the bumps.
Yeah,
and I know wrestling has changed dramatically within those last 12 years. So I was like, I don't want to have to start over. I was like, I could do the ref.
Yeah,
why not? So how it started was Kid USA.
Yeah,
remember
Jay
Gillette?
Yeah.
Jay Gillette? I was friends with him on Facebook, and he put up a post that he was having a charity event for a kid in Uxbridge who got hit by a car.
Right on.
So they wanted to raise some money. So I was like, oh, okay. Message him. Say, hey, Jay. I said, if you need a ref, let me know. couple days later, gets back to me. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come on down. Go do the show. That's when I reacquainted with Bo, Slick, all those guys from back in Kowalski's day. And
I'm sure the wrestling fraternity, you walked in there like, oh,
yeah, it was just like I
no
remember Bo was the first one I saw. He was like, oh, my goodness, somebody from the dead. So, give him a big hug. We just started talking. Say, I have a school out in Wakefield, Belltime Club. I think it was Victory Championship Wrestling or something like that before it was Belltime Club or whatever. So I reffed the match over there. Did a little wrestling spot with Jay and his son Travis.
Right, who's now built like Dad used to. He's pretty jacked up.
He's big. Yeah, I remember Travis when he was 2 years old. Yeah, going in with Jay, getting up on the turnbuckles with his hands in the air, and then when I seen him again, he's 6'2", 200 pounds, nothing but just solid muscles. Like, oh my God,
crazy man.
Yeah. So after that match, I reacquainted with Bo. I started training up at Belltime Club with him and started getting on little shows here and there. And that's about it.
So now you're pretty regularly. So who are the companies you're currently working with?
Right now I work for New England Championship Wrestling for Sheldon Goldberg. I made my debut for New England All-Star Wrestling. What show was that? When was that?
Was it the last one?
Yeah.
So March. Oh, the one before that.
What was that?
Well,
it was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, March 2nd.
Yeah.
December. What the hell is the matter with you?
Well, the show started. the show started in December, but after the afterstage at the post-match meeting, it ended in March.
Time ago.
Yeah, the locker room meeting lasted
lasted
a couple months.
Lasted about exactly.
So that's what it was. It felt like December to March.
What else? XWA here in Rhode Island.
Yep.
What Wrestling here in Rhode Island. Lucky Pro, which has his shows out in Clinton.
What has a big show on
tomorrow?
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Talk about that more in detail.
Yeah.
Who else? Did a dark match for Evolve down in New York, which was a good experience.
Top Rope?
Top Rope. Yeah, I'm kind of like the fill-in guy for Top Rope. Whenever Bass or Tony P is not available, they call me.
And that happens, and then you end up just one thing happens, and then the next thing you know, you're the regular. It's often how
trying to push one of these guys.
That's the thing.
Good luck.
Well, that's one of the things with refereeing that we've talked about with it. Unfortunately, there are plenty of guys who, like we talked, go to Foot Locker and get their or eBay or whatever. And now I'm a referee who knows nothing about it. Yeah. But as far as the shows that will use credible, good referees. There's really going to be, if they have six to 8 matches, 2 to 3 referees top. So most companies will only have 2 referees. Yeah. So it's as hard as it is, well, nowadays it's not so hard to get, but as hard as it is to get on a good show as a wrestler, it's all the more hard to get on the show as a referee.
Fact.
Very limited referees.
Yeah. And
good referees at that.
Right. No, agreed.
Well, that's the thing is, I say in New England, I say it all the time, that if I'm running an event, there are 4, maybe 5 now, because I think Tyler Calloway is coming along quite nicely. But I mean, if it's not Tony, Jack, Kevin Quinn, or myself, then you're probably doing something wrong. And I don't mind saying that. I don't mind going out there and saying that. That's just the way it is. It's really hard to find a quality ref, but especially in New England, I feel there's a lot of not good referees. But I think it's to the point now where the 4 of us monopolize. Yeah, I mean, you can't really get into New England if you're not you can't really get into their promotions as a referee at this point.
One of the best things as a wrestler was when you ever got to that point where you had enough, if you want to say clout, or enough respect by the promoter where you could you come in and say, hey, I see you got the line, I need this referee. And you would get you had so you could go to a show and it's all right, Bass reffing. Like before, we were like doing, I want Bass to ref my match, or what? You have those refs that you were comfortable with, and like you knew that. All right, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna get the referee I want to work with, and then it's gonna be a night off because they're not gonna disrupt the match. They're only gonna add to it because like a great ref can make a match, a poor ref can kill a match
easily. And I mean at this point, like, I'd say Yep.
I agree. And it's important to have a good match, a good ref.
Oh, it's crucial.
It is because I see. I don't want to dog refs, but there, a lot of refs, friends on Facebook who I've never met before in my life, but I'm friends with them on Facebook for whatever reason. They'll post some of their matches on there, and it's like, why were you there? Why were you in that spot?
Exactly.
They do a big, huge move or whatever, and then their accounts are just like, like I would have did it different.
I look at it like they get these spots because the promoters don't know what it's like to have a referee that is good enough to add to a match. And then when they get a good ref, they'll never want to go back. So it's just a matter of taking over and getting into all these places. So, and you do have you get a bond too, because I look Jack, Kevin, and Tony are three of my best friends in wrestling because we have a bond of we know what it's like, how difficult it is, and how frustrating it is
to be the new guy. And I'll say with you, the first time I did an XWA show, I went down there. Kevin Quinn, who I trained with at New England Pro Wrestling Academy, I love that guy. He says, I'm going to introduce you to Bass, who's the senior referee at XWA. So I go down there. Never met Rich before in my entire life. I introduce myself to him. The first thing he does is give me a hug. No handshakes, just a hug. And then, a new guy like myself at the time coming into into a promotion where they already have refs, established refs, to be accepted like that is, it was huge.
Yeah, well, Jose had put you over huge coming in there.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to be turning heel soon thereafter, so I knew.
It was a couple years.
Was it?
Yeah. Because you just recently turned heel, what? How long?
It's been 2 years now.
And I've been with XWA 3?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
I feel like me turning heel at XWA was talked about for like 10 years before it finally happened. So.
But, to be accepted by Bass, Tony P., and Quinn, these guys were doing it years before I even thought about coming back into it. And to be accepted, it just felt good, And I've been on shows where some of the refs, they just look at you and they don't say nothing to you. You're like, oh, here goes another one coming try to take my spot, whatever.
And I think about Rich talking about stories where he was getting real, and Rich is. The first time I met Rich, God, years and years ago now, almost 20 years at this point.
Yeah, I was 16.
One of the guys who was involved, who was a referee then a wrestler, who was the booker of YPW for a while, Guy Medeiros, he had said, hey, there's this ref that I've been working with if you need a referee. And he came, it was one of those, hey, somebody whose opinion I valued, sent Rich over. And we knew right away that Rich, you saw him, he was a young kid, but he's like, wow, this kid's a good referee. And he only has gotten better. But hearing him talk about, I'm in this locker room with this referee, this referee, this referee, this referee, there's 5 of us. And, you hear the names of the referees, and you're like, wow, that's, a bunch of horrible referees. And they're all treating him like crap because they're worried about this. He might get to referee the title match tonight.
Yeah.
And it's like, Rich is like, you know what? I'd rather not be reffing the match with the 2 S-bags for the title who suck. I'd rather do this opening match that's like Mike Bennett and some, whatever. I'll do that opening match with
these. Fine. The undercard's going to be better anyway.
Yeah, I'll wrestle these guys that I know, or these cats from Maine who are coming down, and we'll have fun. Yep. But I mean, we've had more than one discussion about that, about how. But now it's the opposite. When you have the good referee, it used to be the crappy referees who are like, we have to bond together, make sure that these young upstarts don't take our spots. But now you've got this you, Jack, Kevin, Rich, Tony P. You've got this this small list of really good refs, and you guys are just as much as the wrestling fraternity. You're part of that as well, but it's like the referees fraternity. And I see Rich and Tony, and they get in the ring and they tear each other's heads off when they're, but like best buddies out to you know, and it's like to see that kind of support for each other and bringing each other up. It's awesome. But you think about I think about how that's changed, and I'm sure on the bottom, I'm sure if one of you guys showed up to one of these shows where there's it's whatever VFW hall that somebody's rented and they booked you to be a ref and they have 3 other referees who are sweatpants refs and they're looking at you like, oh, is he gonna get the main event? Why is he doing the main event tonight? Whereas you guys are just like, all right, here's where I need to be.
And there's no issues. Whenever, tomorrow, me, Rich, and Tony will be on what? And there'll be no issues with who gets what card. It's not an issue. And I love that. You go there, all right, hey, can I do this match? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Take this one. Take that one. Yeah. It's not an issue. The thing is when that's...
Like he was just saying, when I came in, it was tough because I was the new guy and I was better than the other refs that have been there for a while. So it was always like, the promoter puts the card up and like one of the referees would run over to it with a pen and write in all the names. Write my name in, and it's like, all right.
Like Rich would have 1 match. This guy would have 3 matches.
So I didn't, I look at it now as I'm in the position of that I can sort of dictate the referee culture now in New England in a way.
Yeah.
Where I'm not gonna, if it's not one of you guys, it's probably not gonna happen in a way. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
Those referees have been phased out.
Yeah.
None of those guys work around here anymore. Like, I feel, what JT's done for wrestling in New England, I think that we've done for referees.
Yeah, you think about I know
because I didn't like you said, I didn't want you to be treated the way that I was coming in as a referee. Even though you have years of experience in the business, it's almost like a fresh start because
absolutely.
And so why shouldn't everybody get a chance? Like, so at what? I'm identified as the senior official, but we swap off.
Exactly.
No one quit when they heard you were the senior official.
We swap off who does the main event.
Yep.
Like literally, no matter what the main event is at what, we rotate. So every event, someone else
gets a shot. We get
the main event ref.
Yeah.
Because they have big matches that are showcased that get a lot of eyes on them.
Yeah.
And everybody, all 3 of us, deserve to have our chance. So why would I just, be a mark and be like, no, I'm going to do... That's not right. And, I love these guys like my brother. Why shouldn't they also get a chance? So why isn't it that way everywhere?
A common thread, with the exception of Kevin Quinn was a fan in the front row at our shows in Quincy and flexing to taunt the heels and then told Rich I'd love to get involved as a referee, and because he realized he at his age starting in his 40s was probably unrealistic for him to wrestle, but then he kind of became friends with guys like that, got himself involved. But the other 3 we're talking about, Rich, Tony P, and yourself, Jack, you guys all started, you especially, as a wrestler.
Yeah.
Rich originally started, as a wrestler. Tony, both talked about it, and then they realized, well, in Tony's case, he was like at the practice matches, hey, could you jump in and ref? And he realized, well, this is probably more realistic, as did Rich. So you've got guys who can, if need be, first of all, where you need to be as a wrestler.
Yeah.
But, so it's like that dual role. Like, if something happened, Rich has thrown a hood on and gone out there and filled the spot, and while you might not want to, you're totally qualified to do so. And I think that level of commitment to the wrestling business, if you will, you're trained to be a wrestler just because you've chosen to be a referee. That it's not like it's a step down. Like,
no,
he's a referee.
Absolutely not.
Whereas you get the kids in like the sweatpant refs who show up, and it's because they couldn't referee. They showed up. They're somebody's friend. They want to be in the business. It's that same level of commitment to the business.
Exactly.
It's just as important a role. And
Absolutely.
actually, it's the thing is that referee role is it's also way less of an ego boost because you guys shouldn't be. There's definitely, you guys get identified by the fans and Jack Hill's here, he's not going to let the heels get away with stuff when he they listen to him, but it's not like you're getting theme music, you're coming out, you're referee, and they pop locally. Now they do pop for you guys because you guys are good referees.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny because Tony P gets pops everywhere.
Yeah,
it's
they love
funny. Tony P. XWA, Rich gets the booze. People can't stand him.
Yep.
And then when they introduce me, it's all you hear is the crickets.
And for the longest time, we did
Rich
the same
Pelly,
thing.
referee, Jack Hill.
Before we ever did a heel referee thing with Rob Tuttle. We used to have Rob Tuttle.
Yeah, Rob's a Tuttle. I love Rob too.
And like before we did a heel ref thing with him, but before we ever did that, there'd be your referee Rob Tuttle, and people would just boo him mercilessly. And so like, you know what? We're gonna give them what they want, and we had him do a little heel run, and it was fun.
Yep.
But
that was when I used to get the cheers because I was working with Rob Tuttle, and they hated him so much that they would cheer.
You're
for
a
me.
senior official, Rich Bass, yay!
Yeah, not
So,
anymore.
but yeah, no, it's like you guys, but you get what you get, but that's not because you're playing. You're not, looking into the crowd and kipping into the ring and what. It's not like you. It's really a selfless role, but you understand that your role is to add to the match and where you belong.
Add to the match, but stay invisible.
Yeah.
You don't
appear when you need to be appearing,
exactly.
and then be invisible. Yeah.
And that itself it's
an art.
It's an art, exactly. If you can't, it's important. You got to know where the wrestlers, which way they're moving. You got to watch for camera angles. You got to work the hard cam. And a lot of people just think, oh, you're just out there, you're throwing on a zebra shirt and you're counting the thing. No, it's not like that. Yeah. It is not. And believe me, when I wrestled, it was one thing. Then when I transitioned over to the referee, man, it was a whole brand new, like, oh wow, I don't know that. Oh, I didn't know you had to do this. I didn't, and it was just
like while you're working the camera, working the hard cam when you're wrestling.
Exactly.
But then when you're reffing, you're going to work the horseshoe. So you're not.
You got to work the horseshoe, exactly. And I didn't know any of that stuff until I did a Ring of Honor camp a couple years ago down in Bristol, Pennsylvania. I walked in there. I'm like, oh man, when I leave here, I'm gonna get a contract. I'm gonna quit my job, tell my job to go pound sand or whatever. But when I left that seminar, I realized how much I did not know.
Who was running the seminar when you were there?
It was Todd Sinclair.
Oh, so was it for referees? Was that what it was?
No, it was like it was for workers and refs. So it was Delirious was one of the head trainers at the time. Steve Carino was there.
Bob
Evans, was he there yet? Or
yeah,
not?
Bob. He was there on one of them. Who else? A couple other Ring of Honor guys. What's the tag team?
Briscoes
were there. Those guys were awesome. The other ones. Oh man, I'm having a brain fart right now. I can't remember.
I'm trying to think who else.
Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels.
Yeah.
They were there.
Yeah, talk about
so
the ring job.
yeah, so pretty much Todd Sinclair, he broke it down to me. It was like, all right, I watched several of your tryout matches. This is what you did wrong. And he gave me a list of things that I did wrong. You blocked the hard cam. You blocked the cameras in the corner. You're at okay.
Yeah, that's
your
fine.
butt was towards this camera, that camera, this camera. And I left there, and I'm like, man, I don't know anything.
And if he manages to keep his fat ass out of the front of the camera, then you should be able to keep yours out of there.
But he is good. I like Todd.
It's funny.
He's gotten better. He's had a lot of on-the-job training.
It's funny because I remember like one of the first shows. I'm up in Clinton, Mass, doing a show, and I think it was one of the
Lucky Pro.
No, it was before It was before Chris Sullivan and Jim Burgoyne ever did anything in wrestling other than sold autographs. No, it was I forget who was even running it, but we're doing. I forget who we're wrestling. That was the place where we wrestled Jim Neidhart eventually, but I don't think it was that night. And we had this chubby short referee who looked like Bobby Hill from King of the Hill, and I'm like, who is it? All right. And we did the match, and I was like, wow, dude, that was pretty solid. So whenever we had him, then it ended up being Fat Pants. But I was at the time like to know now that he's traveled all over the world, been in Japan doing it. It's like I would have never guessed initially that he, of all the guys that I worked with, would have kind of been the shot caller as far as referees in Ring of Honor. But that's a think about the guys you were. Delirious has traveled around the world, and he produces their TV. He's their, he's their booker. So it's a lot of good information to come out of those things.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information, and leaving there, driving the 5 hours back, made me realize like, wow, I got to work on a lot before I even think about taking it to the next step. And that's what a lot of referees don't realize, like. I'll just go put this shirt on. Tell me the finish. 1, 2, 3. It's not like that. Unless that's where you just want to stay. If you're trying to expand and get your name out there, I mean, there's a lot of things that you got to work on that you got to know.
And I think another thing with the referees, that real quick, before I get into that, you are tuned to 101.1 FM, WBRU-LP, WFOO-LP, WVVX-LP Providence, streaming online, BSRlive.com, Brown Street Community Radio, serving the curious listener. It's the Pier 6 Roundtable. We're talking today with former wrestler, now referee, Jack Hill. So what I was going to go with that was that you also, referees, I find that referees who are confident enough in their abilities that when they're working with guys who are younger and they get back after the match and say, hey, listen, you guys put the heat on me. You guys kept doing, because I think one of the reasons why good referees get that pop from the people is the people see that when that referee's in the ring, they are the law. So they're going to call things down the middle. When they tell a referee, you do it again, I'm going to disqualify you. It's a legit threat because I've seen the person push it, they've disqualified him. But when you get like tag teams that just ignore the ref's counts and stuff like that. But to have
we have another 3 hours for that.
Yeah,
right?
but to have I think part of it is referees who are trained and aware of where they need to be, and then after a match, actually will come back and be like, what the F, guys? You guys put all the heat on me. What do you mean? Well, let's see. I'm supposed to keep you guys out, 5 count. You're supposed to be out.
Yeah.
And you're doing 35 tag team maneuvers, making me look like a jerk because I didn't disqualify you.
I can't even count how many times I have been in the hood's ass about burying me in the ring. Like, guys, I could have counted to 25, like, easily. Like, I'm going to give you some leniency where it's like a 1 Mississippi type thing.
Mississippi.
But
all right, guys, let's go.
But
when you're up to 47.
Yeah.
Come on, you got to go. 48.
If the Logan brothers can do it and be the best tag team after all of these years and still answer a 5 count and do better tag maneuvers than anybody else, then anyone else can do it.
Because if you know how to play that's part of the art of it. If you learn how to play that 5 count, you're a better wrestler because you use it to your advantage.
Yep. There's a reason why the Logans, after all this time, are still the best tag team in New England. Is because they adhere to the rules of tag team wrestling. And that's part of the deal, guys, is you have to adhere to the rules of wrestling. And they do. You can't just go in it's not tag team wrestling anymore. It's just a free-for-all. The rules of wrestling are in place for a reason because it's all part of the show. So if you're acting within those boundaries, then you're not doing it right. That's the whole point. You're not doing it right.
I was in Missouri at Harley Races School, and we were at a camp there. And so Harley's there, and the drills and stuff were being run by, at this point, by Les Thatcher and by Dr. Tom Pritchard. And so there's a guy who, and I wish his name's Jeff, and everybody calls him Sarge, but he runs a wrestling company out of Colorado, and I believe he trains guys there as well. Really technically sound like Les Thatcher's like, yeah, I've been to his school. He runs a hell of a program. So if Les is like not grumpy about you, you got to be good. And he was reffing the match, and there was 2 guys, and this was like people at this camp were getting a look to possibly go to Pro Wrestling Noah, and this camp had sent guys. This is the camp, not this particular one, but a later camp would send Bobby Fish to he was Jerk Jackson. They're like, the name's awful, change it, and we'll send you. And it's like, well, go to Japan. I'm Bobby Fish. But so there was 2 guys in the ring, and this was like a tryout camp, and Sarge is the referee, and they had this great looking, like super crisp opener, and it's all on the fly, nothing's planned, and it's like, wow, these guys really impressed him. Then the heel gets on top of the babyface, and he's got him in the corner choking him, and Sarge is like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with a good pace, 5, turns around, still happened, ring the bell, and they're like, what? He goes, 5 seconds, you guys, you didn't break the choke, I'm disqualifying you. And the guy's like, oh no, and Les is like, referee is qualified. You pay attention to your ring. Get the hell out of the ring. You're done for the day. And didn't let the kid wrestle until after lunch after that because that was your chance. You had 8 minutes. We're giving you a full 8 minutes to come here and show us what you got. Call it on the fly. Earn yourself a spot on the show tonight. And you buried your referee. He disqualified you. You're done. Kid ended up wrestling in the Battle Royal that night. Mm-hmm. Yep. And he was a stud. The kid definitely looked good. He was but yeah, I was like, wow, that was the other great part of that camp was Ace Steel, who was, I mean, again, he was one of the guys who brought up CM Punk. He was wrestling with Jason Blade, and it was they were putting a good heat on. Blade had a great shine. He's putting the heat on Blade, bang, 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 and Blade goes to cut him off and do a quick comeback, and Ace just pie faces him, goes, "I'm the heel, brother. I'll call your comeback." Because, I mean, Ace is this tremendous ring general. And he was absolutely right. Blade was so used to being with, guys in New England where he can just call his comeback. Not like this, a Midwest heel who knows trained CM Punk and was involved. And and he just pie faced because I'll call your comeback.
That's awesome.
And Les, you just hear Les after.
You'll never see that. No.
It would, but Jason Blade afterwards, it was like we weren't. None of us were like, like worried about. We were like, and he came out and he's like, he was right. You know, it was a lesson. He knew the guy was. He knew he was wrong, and there was no. It wasn't like it was a little embarrassing for him in front of like Dr. Tom, but it was a lesson, and they all knew. No one was like, "Oh, Ace is trying to embarrass him." It's like Ace just taught him a lesson. Yeah. He and then he did it in a friendly way. He didn't stiff him. He just gave him, shut him down. Didn't let his arm drag happen, and old school wrestling. So
nothing wrong with
cool.
that.
No. So who are some of your now? You get to with all the companies you mentioned, you get to work with a lion's share of great talent. So who are some of your favorite wrestlers? Like when you walk in there and you look at your assignments and you're like, I'm reffing matches with these guys. Who are some of your favorite guys to see that you're going to be working with?
I think today, right now, is Retrocentral AG. I don't know what it is. He just has the charisma, and he knows. And reffing his matches, it's just so entertaining, and he makes you look good as well. We did an Evolve camp this past December. I reffed his tryout match.
Yeah.
And that match was the reason why I was able to get on.
Oh, right on.
Dark
so
Mind.
they'd seen you already.
Yeah, they'd seen me. And he's just amazing.
And he's done the other way. He was a kid who we've talked about Anthony on the show before, spent his time grubbing around the shows, picking up garbage after the shows as a 13-year-old, but then got himself where he started refereeing. So he's done it. We talked about, in you guys' cases, training as wrestlers and then end up as referees. Well, he started as a referee and then decided he certainly wanted to be a wrestler and did it the other way around. But you're right. He's firing on all cylinders with his gimmick. And he's so young, but he already gets it. And he's just starting to fall into his stride with this act he's got now with the girls and the bombshells.
It's really good.
The honeys.
They've got big lighters now.
Do they really?
Yep. Big lighters with the Platinum Honeys bums on it. and one has AG's face on it, but why would you want to get that if you could get the bums?
Yeah.
Bum lighter or AG lighter?
That's the lighter you give to your friend. Hey, you got a light? Yeah. In case that one gets stolen, you don't have to worry about it. But
you can have it.
And Trips is another one.
Yeah.
I love reffing his matches. He's just so into it from beginning to end. Yeah.
And again, this show could be like at times subtitled the tributes to Trib because but I mean this is a guy who I've literally watched come up from the backyard to being like now like when you talk to people are regularly talking about how like he's one of their favorite guys to work with, like one of the MVPs of the scene, and it's like, man, I remember when they were like, oh, he's one of Mad Dog's S-bag trainees. Don't worry about. But to see how far he's come and like the level of respect that he has earned, it's awesome. I love that because he's just he loves this business with his whole heart and like he just brings it every time. Like there are times where it's like he shouldn't be working that hard, but. He does.
Was putting you over to somebody the other day. They
fake
had
news.
No,
Hashtag fake news.
They asked who trained him, and he was putting you over.
Nice.
I can't remember who it was.
Holiday's another one. Richard Holiday.
Yep.
He's a good one. He's a good one to ref.
While he's still here.
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't sit next to him with commentary. Oof. After he'd wrestled, man.
Oh.
Banging breath.
Oh, no.
I have to let him. Is he on tonight? He's here tonight. Yeah.
It's him and King Leon against Santino
and Striker.
I was doing color on the show, and they had him come and sit down. It was one of the New England All-Star Wrestling shows, and I just I wasn't gonna like bury him on the mic because that's like anytime you're doing like I think the color guy shouldn't be in there to put himself over like so like when the heel puts a little oh come on you don't throw like the jabs back. It's not about you're trying to build as the color guy why moves mean something why So he was throwing and I'm just like oh man brother you could gag a maggot with the breath on it and the kid's a hell of a talent.
Gag a maggot.
He's a hell of a talent, but man, he was sitting right next to me for that match, and I was just like,
that's a T-shirt, Richard Holiday.
Yeah, right.
Your breath can gag him. We're gonna have to put a sign to have somebody hold it.
Oh my God! Right
now, I got heat. Now, without even knowing it, I've got heat with Richard Holiday. Now he's gonna be like, oh that Pier 6 douchebag. I got bad breath.
I forgot to take pictures with his ring jacket in obscene ways because he forgot his ring jacket at a show. and I had picked it up, so it was at my house for like a week.
We were brainstorming things you could do with it, too.
So I was going to, like, go around my apartment taking screwed up pictures with it, sitting on my couch butt naked with his jacket on and, like...
Just getting out of the shower with a towel around your waist, put the jacket on.
Smoking a fatty in Richard Holiday's jacket or something like that. But
at Luigi's making you...
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, man, tremendous. So who are some of the guys that you haven't had a chance to work with who you've seen come through who you'd like to?
Let me see.
And it's a tough question with referees because usually the refs are like, anybody who's good. But there's usually typical guys you see that just are, above and beyond that you'd like to.
I like JT Dunn. Tony does a lot of his matches.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of JT Dunn matches, but I mean, I would like to work some of his matches because he's awesome. He just makes everybody look good.
He's another guy that surrounded himself with people that he likes.
Who else? I mean, there's so many. I don't think I could think of any names, but
he's definitely going on that whole rising tide lifts all ships. So, he surrounds himself with people who either are at that level or deserve to be at that level.
Yeah, he catches a lot of flack for it because, I mean, if you're not on his team.
Right. Oh, he's booking shows with his friends in the ghetto.
Yeah. I can see how he's a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
But he does what he says, man. He makes places better than what they were before. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're not going to be flying him to all over the United States, to bring down the quality of a show. There's definitely a recognition of a guy his size. He's not a huge guy, but is being flown all over, and he's making a career as a pro wrestler, not contracted to a major company yet. Hopefully that yet is an important part of that statement, but because it's what he brings to shows, it's undeniable the level of intensity and just what he brings to shows. I'm hoping some of the guys he's wrestled over the last few years who are now in influence positions will recall that when it's important, when the time comes. I know right now you can't sign 100 people at one time for projects, but you hope that when something comes up, that's something he'll be respected and thought about. Because, again, as much as he brings people up here and he elevates the talent, the guys who he helps come up with him, he can go in there and he can establish himself as a big player and continue. Like, he can put guys over. Like, guys who people have known, he can make look better.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's one of
those
those
he put some of the younger, on Thursday Night Throwdowns, he put some of the younger guys, the students in there. And it's like night and day. Mm-hmm. When he worked Bullet a few times, and Bullet just looked...
Yeah. Yep. And now that confidence that Bullet has.
Well, he's got booked now for tomorrow.
It's amazing.
And
he'll succeed. I
love Bullet. Yeah, Bullet is awesome.
He's a good little kid.
That's another one. That's another guy who I like to ref his matches because I always talk crap to him in the ring when he's in there,
Even King Leon started going down to the Tuesday night practices with JT.
Yeah,
and now he's starting to get that mentality.
Him and McCarthy wrestling. Yeah. I mean, that's that's an interesting matchup because as good as McCarthy is at this point with the mass whole gimmick is really good.
Yeah.
So the whole those two and the King, he's solid in the ring, but the personality is awesome. So you've got two larger than life guys. Yeah. The King of Voice style, King Leon, and that's tomorrow at What Wrestling. Just throwing that out there.
Music, go buy your tickets, people.
So it'll be a good show, and that's one of those matches that was thrown on there, and and I have no horses in that race at all. I just I'm friends with McCarthy, and I've met King. We've had King as a guest in here, and I've seen his progression over the last 6 to 8 months, and I think that's going to be that's kind of one of those sleeper matches where you might not expect on a What Wrestling show when you got guys like Casey Navarro and Pinky Sanchez and AR Fox and Danny Moff, all these guys who have begun to etch their reputations on the independents through the internet or whatever. These guys were kind of and again, like Bullet, another guy who, all right, he's been in one scramble match there, but they're not names yet, but they just need that opportunity.
Oh, Bullet's wrestling Jimmy Lloyd.
Yeah.
So it was funny. Bullet was
CZW guy
trying to prepare for this, and for those of you who are not aware of who Jimmy Lloyd is, he's like a deathmatch wrestler.
Yeah, CZW.
From CZW. And in that realm of the wrestling community, he's a pretty big deal. And what wrestling is bringing him in to try to showcase his wrestling abilities. So Bullet tried to find matches of Jimmy Lloyd, so he can have a point of reference as to what he's going to be getting himself into. And I guess the first thing he saw was
tubes,
Jimmy Lloyd going
wire.
through a table of light tubes and stuff like that. So he doesn't really know exactly what he's getting himself into. So that should be interesting. Yeah, he has nothing to go off of because everything is just deathmatch garbage. So yeah.
Maybe I'll pull a rib on him. I'll tell him, here, just take these bag of thumbtacks, right?
Yeah.
As soon as he slams you, I'll pour it on you, and you can just go through.
Perfect. Yeah.
Or just tell him before he gets a chance to really talk to the guy. Hey, oh man, I don't know. He had like this big bag of, and I saw him getting razor blades ready for something. I don't know.
Could be like Len Oddity and have a bag of dildos. That's what he used in hardcore matches. He had a bag of dildos.
Yeah.
Oh, the clown guy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. What a phrase you never thought you'd hear on radio: "Bag of dildos."
Yeah. Good morning, everybody in
Yeah.
Providence, listening to 101.1 right now.
Right. Hey.
Bag of dildos.
That's a great insult for somebody.
You're a bag of dildos.
You're a bag of dildos.
Yeah.
I'll get a memo from the management. It's been brought to our attention that you use the phrase dildo not once,
Several times.
12, 15 times,
Yeah.
preceded by bag of.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of them.
Jack, this is a historic moment. You're on the last ever episode of
There you go. Look at that.
Roundtable. Oh, man. It's suddenly very hot in here.
In the old
I
days,
just botched the radio show.
when we were back in the days of WELH, our original before when we were terrestrial before our time off, we had what was because that signal was owned by Wheeler School, and we had something called the Ma Wheeler rule, which basically meant if Grandma Wheeler, like whoever Grandma is, would hear what you're talking about and be offended, you probably shouldn't be saying it.
Oh, geez.
So I go, yeah, well, I have friends who are like, in their mid-40s who are grandparents now, and they say far worse than bag of dildos. But that's not Grandma Wheeler.
Mike McCarthy's a grandfather. Think about the stuff he says.
I just seen one of his promos he did on King Leon.
Yeah, wasn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
Can't repeat that on there.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be interesting while we were talking about refereeing. I went online and I actually found the official wrestling rules.
Oh my!
For the National Wrestling Alliance in 1974.
Jeez. No over the top ropes.
They issued this, and I want to definitely this to be kind of a discussion as to how it would affect things now that you guys do. But these were as sanctioned by the National Wrestling Alliance, and at the time in 1974, they were the largest governing body in wrestling, including the WWF at the time. They were the WWF Capital Sports. They were under the NWA banner. So this was, as far as wrestling went, worldwide, people bought into these rules. These were the rules. So the count on the floor is no longer 20, but has been changed to a 10 count. The rule went into effect August 11th, 1973. An intentional striking of the referee will result in an automatic disqualification or suspension. So the 10 count now, it's been 40,
Ring of Honor still does
years.
the 20 count.
And they're doing the 20 count on the floor.
Yeah.
And so the 10 count has been around now, and they keep that with the WWE, but that's been for 44 years now. That used to be a 20, but Ring of Honor does that. So, and it's interesting because they actually do recognize the NWA World Champion at times, and don't recognize that rule.
Weird.
Of course, the NWA as it is now probably doesn't even know where these rules are.
In Evolve, they don't even do countouts anymore.
That's sort of the
They don't do the 10
ECW thing,
counts on the
Like at all?
At all, nope.
No hair pulling, eye gouging, strangleholds, or biting. No pulling of trunks, masks, or any other equipment. No straight punches or kicks with the point of the toe.
Really?
How many times did the friggin' wrestlers get me with a point of a toe kick?
God.
Sons of guns. Note, contestants who repeatedly violate any of the above rules will be disqualified. The following violations are automatic disqualifications. 1, throwing the opponent over the top rope.
Yep.
Now, one of the reasons why they did that, though, was because then think about what the attraction of a battle royal. How do you eliminate somebody? You throw them over the top rope. In any other match, that's a disqualification. But in a battle royal, it's legal. That was part of the logic of that, and it was also a way to protect their guys because they didn't have, mats on the ring back then. It was cement. You were trying to protect your guys. Karate thrust to the throat, illegal. Automatic DQ. How many guys now do that cross chop to the throat all the time? The pile driver hold.
Damn.
Failing to break an illegal hold before the referee's 5 count. I think we just talked about that. Going back to the pile driver, actually, I was just watching some of the later world class shows from the late '80s, and they actually did the whole deal with it was Kerry Von Erich was the world class champion, and Jerry Lawler was the AWA champion, and they did a deal where they both hit the referee at the same time. So the referee they're brawling, the referee goes to interject, they both look at each other, they slug the ref. So the whole thing is in both world class and in AWA at the time, you'd lose your title on a disqualification. So because they were both disqualified, they stripped them both of the titles.
Yeah.
So then the whole deal was that super clash, they'll face each other. So then they did, in a rematch, they did a deal where Jerry Lawler, he hit the pile driver and Kerry, and there was something along the lines of, well, you hit the pile driver, and in world class, the pile driver is a disqualification, So or he hit Lawler with the pile driver, and they did a whole thing. Well, you hit a pile driver, and that's illegal. Well, where I wrestle, the pile driver is not illegal, but if you lose you can lose the title on a DQ. So they have they played off the rule changes between the two companies.
That seems like the fans lose. That one, because
it was very cut and dry. It was it wasn't confusing like a Shackles match or whatever match you were talking about the other day that was a bit confusing. But the use of any foreign object, so no chairs, no anything, no head, no whatever goofy thing you're bringing in the ring. Any interference with the duties of the referee. So that means even if you get the heel who tries to cut you off, the referee, and put your hands to spin you around, they would disqualify a guy putting their hand if you didn't interfere with the referee, you were done. Continuing to abuse a defeated opponent, so putting the boots to him after instantly reverse the call. So it wasn't just you're holding, it was just even if you continued to kick him or whatever afterwards, they were supposed to disqualify you. Any interference by managers, seconds, or cornermen. Tag team save rule. Automatic disqualification when one team member saves another on any shore pinning or submission combination more than once. So in a tag match, you could do the dive and save once. You got one save on a pin.
That's it.
After that, it was considered coming in the ring without a tag, and you get disqualified. I think that's actually kind of a neat one. I think it's hard for the fans to follow, maybe. But in those days, if that was sort of what was established, it's sort of like when ROH did the Pure Wrestling thing, and the guys got 3 rope breaks. So you're in a submission hold, you get to the rope, you only can do it 3 times. Once your rope breaks, and I think they would have at that point the ring announcer, so and so has used one of their rope breaks, 2, But interesting way of sort of changing around their the rules. No intentional punching or kicking in the groin or kidney area. How many times as referees have you just seen a guy blatantly do a nut shot now? It's almost like maybe guys are not resorting to that anymore, but there was a period of time where it was like guys would have contests of the different kinds of nut shots they could do, and the referee's just sitting there watching it.
Yeah.
That's a foul. That's
that's fortunately never happened to me.
Probably because it was during that 12 years.
Probably. But I've never been in a match so far where they just intentionally nut shot somebody.
We were in a match.
You got to DQ them. You can't.
I've done it before.
Yeah.
I was working a match with the power company that they insisted on calling the entire thing as they do, and we're trying to work, and for cutoffs, they're like, "Nut me, brother, nut me," and it was 8 nut shots. They just kept calling, "Nut me," and it's if you didn't do what they told you, they would just not work with you. So you're, and after the match, it's just Joe Eugenio comes up and goes, "There were 8 ball shots in that match." We're like, blame the Twins, not us. I mean, we were doing them, but we were just doing what you told us to go out there and work the match they wanted us to work because we were the heels now. We weren't calling.
Oh, Joe used to tell us years later, low blows keeps you off shows.
Yeah.
And that's what he would tell the locker room.
Going back to when I was in Missouri for Harley Race, it was World League Wrestling. The commission does not allow nut shots. They will fine a promoter $500 if there's nut shots on the show. Legit. And It's to the point where Sarge, who I was talking about earlier, in the match, he was in a 3-way match. He goes to the top rope, and somebody did the whole bump the rope, and he crotched himself. Harley Race had a discussion with the commission, let it go, but there was a question of if that violated because it was technically something with the groin.
God, it's a work.
Right, but what they see at the time in Missouri, having a strict commission, there were a lot of backyards and outlaws popping up, and it was a way to keep it like only legit companies running. That was, you had a commission who oversaw things, and that's how you kept guys who were unlicensed out of there running shows. You weren't getting the funsy onesies, Following maneuvers are legal: judo chops, forearm blows, bolo punches, instep and flat of foot kicks. The use of ropes to gain leverage. Contestants may spring against the ropes as in tackles and other such maneuvers, providing the contact with the ropes is momentary. It is legal to continue wrestling your opponent until he is clearly entangled in the ropes and the referee calls for a break. Wrestlers cautioned to protect themselves on the break. So when the break was happening, you were actually expected to put, instead of just putting your head out there to get decked, when the referee was breaking, you were expected to put your hands up and protect yourself so that when he said, fight, you weren't getting, you weren't leaving yourself prone. As opposed to now where people just, turn their backs on their opponents or whatever. Contestants will get 10 counts on the apron of the ring and 10 on the floor. Championships cannot change hands when the victory is gained by disqualification. In any situation not covered by these rules, the NWA will honor the judgment and discretion of the appointed referee. Therefore, the referee's decision is final. I just thought it's interesting to see how a lot of it's the same, but there's a lot of like little nuances now that I think would really, if you threw in there as a referee that you were going to do, people would just be disrupted. If you actually disqualified guys when they were burying you.
I mean, I've done it. It's been a while.
Right.
Again, net shots probably, tag matches. So, I mean.
Yeah. It used to happen a lot at, like, Bob's shows.
Yeah?
Yeah. But, like I said, I haven't had to do it in a while. But I will. I mean, don't be stupid. There are rules for a reason.
Yeah. Oh, the other one is when you get somebody who just, for whatever reason, they it's not in quotes supposed to be the finish, and they either don't kick out or their opponent doesn't kick out, and then they put the heat on the referee for it happening. I literally have watched guys like their opponent didn't kick out in time, the referee counts 3, the guy who has won the match is going, "That's not it, brother. That's not the finish." It's like, dude, shut up. You won the match. Doesn't matter. You should. The guy doesn't kick out.
Or they change the finish before you. 30 seconds when the referee's already out, they'll change the finish in the back, and then, you go to count 1, 2. Oh, he didn't kick out. That wasn't supposed to be the finish.
Wasn't there a heat of the week in the past week or so? What's the finish? When I don't kick. When.
Oh God.
Oh yeah.
I did. I posted that up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It was you.
Yeah. Yep. When I don't kick out. Oh, you son of a bitch.
Well, guess what? There have been times where guys haven't kicked out in time, and you counted 3, and then they try to put the heat on you. Well, you should have kicked out bigger.
Yeah, and then they almost got stretched by Fergal Devitt for Finn Balor after they tried to give me heat.
Yep.
Yeah. Because they were wrong. Idiots.
So we're going to run down some of the news of the week, stuff that's going on. So word has, though, although we've been talking about Undertaker kind of free agenting it, going to StarCast, and we last week kind of played around with the idea of what his going rates could be. The word is $25,000 an hour, but we sort of talked about the finances behind that and how those are getting worked. He will reportedly wrestle on the next WWE Saudi Arabia show, so there must be some level of he's got to be getting 6 figures for those shows.
Well, didn't the Saudi Arabian prince pay Shawn Michaels like $1 million or something crazy to agree to do the show or something like that? So
there's got to be crazy payoffs for him to be like, oh yeah, well I'm doing my own thing, but no, I'll come back and do Saudi Arabia.
The Saudi Arabian whoever it is that's running those shows, they literally have endless amounts of money, and throwing a guy like Shawn Michaels a cool meal is nothing to them.
A cool meal to come out. I mean, with no offense to Shawn, because I mean he's still one of the greatest, if not the greatest ever. But to have a terrible match.
But the Undertaker did an interview. I don't know if you saw it.
I haven't watched it. You were telling me about it last week.
It's sort of like it's a guy that's a leader of a ministry, so it's got sort of like religious overtones to it, but not overly God, Jesus, like it's sort of just there. So Undertaker's talking to this guy, and the guy asks him like, oh, you've made a return recently, what was that like? And he's talking about like how within the course of 3 or 4 days what his travel was like, and it was like from Seattle for like Raw, home to Texas, Oakland for SmackDown, home to Texas, from Texas to Australia, back to Texas, from Texas to Saudi Arabia, all within 4 days. Jeez. He said that it was one of the worst decisions he's ever made because he just can't do it anymore. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear that he's going to be going back to Saudi Arabia because he said it was like one of the worst things he's done.
And Taker's a bit. I mean, he's 6'8". Like really, and that was one of the things they talked about with Andre the Giant. And again, Andre was like 6'11", 500 pounds, and
had that disease too.
Well, right. But one of the things that they said with him is because of his size. When he's even if he got first class seats, it was never big enough.
Right.
When he got to hotels, the beds were never big enough for him. The cars he was in were never. So it's got to when you're 6'8". Yes, it's a little less, and he's not 500 pounds, 6'8", but he's still a huge guy, and he arguably took way more bumps in his career than Andre ever had to. He didn't have the acromegaly like Rich said, but the giantism. But he's still a big guy who's put a lot of abuse on his. But he's had hip surgeries. He's had, I think, hip replacement. He's had all those different injuries through the years, and they don't get any easier. You get them replaced, but you don't ever go back to 100%. There's always those, even if it's that, oh God, you can feel a cold front's coming in because your hip's locking up. And I know, like, just being somebody who didn't put nearly the amount of dates as a guy like him in. When you're driving in the car on one of those days and you have to drive for 2 or 3 hours, you're just shifting your body because like you're near the next stop you get, you're gonna have to get out and stretch because your leg's going to be locked up. And I can only imagine what it's like for these guys who had tens of thousands of matches rather than 1,000. It's like it's crazy. So I mean, I don't know how he could do it. But again, making 6 to 7 figures for a match, that's a great payoff for 20 minutes of your life. Speaking of Taker, Sting has now come out and said he would love to come out of retirement to wrestle Taker. That would have been great, before they had the whole Brock Lesnar defeating Taker, before he wrestled Seth Rollins and nearly was paralyzed. And at this point, I think Sting's best thing is just like when they had him in the ring for Ric Flair's 70th birthday, let him be an emissary for the company, let him show up at Hall of Fame, make an appearance. I don't want to see, especially not Crow Sting, in the ring ever again. And that's not disrespect for him because the guy has a hell of a career and, a hell of a body of work. Some of his matches his matches with Ric Flair were phenomenal, and brought him to the dance. But yeah, as much as Sting and Taker, 10 years ago would have been like, holy God, that would have been it's you just think about even Taker has lost a step over the last 4 years, and even if it happened when he was having those matches at WrestleMania, where every match that he had, like the Shawn Michaels, the matches with Triple H, like who's Taker going to bring to the have a phenomenal match. One of those would have been great, but now not so much. I just think it'd be a nostalgia act, and you never want guys like that to be just for nostalgia because might as well put them in the Gimmicks Battle Royal. Jim Ross is finishing up with the WWE, and I don't know how word is because you really aren't supposed to be negotiating deals with other companies while under a contract, but he is negotiating with All Elite Wrestling.
Jim Ross is?
Jim Ross. So they're bulking. I mean, they have for right now one show on the docket right now, that Double or Nothing show, but they're...
Well, they have two. They have another one in July.
Oh, but they don't have a regular schedule of shows yet.
In Jacksonville.
I know it's only a matter of time. They're going to start with all the talent they're hiring and stuff and putting things in line for TV or whatever, but you're hiring one of the best play-by-play guys there is, so they've got to have TV on the... unless it's maybe they're going to look in doing like a digital distribution rather. If they could, there's so many digital platforms now between Hulu and Netflix, and maybe they're going to look at a different than trying to go with network TV. There's
with all the money that they've got behind them, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
they do have a lot of money.
Man, that guy from
Tony
Khan has all the money in the world, man.
Jacksonville, the owner of Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, he's got a lot of money.
I'll think about that. You've got a guy who basically has access to a football stadium. So, like, you build it up. You already got your big event. You've already got a venue. It's in Jacksonville. The weather's going to be gorgeous, so you can do a show. You can make your show in October. Well, you don't want to counter with football, but you know, you could easily do it. You know, you don't want to do it in the summer; it's too hot. But you could certainly work around it where that they're using that stadium for something. All Elite also did just sign the former Impact Wrestling star Allie, who was previously known as Cherry Bomb. She is an awesome talent. Her husband Pepper Parks is also a phenomenal. What was his name in? They gave him a different name in Impact. He wasn't Pepper Parks. Jesse, did he go under
Jesse something?
Yeah, because that's Jesse's his real first name. But he came and he wrestled. You were with us in Danvers when he wrestled for he and Claudio Castagnoli wrestled Cesaro. Good dude, great wrestler. That was such a highlight having those guys in.
Yeah,
that was for the
that was a good match.
NWA
Danvers,
World
right?
Title. Yeah,
Danvers.
NWA World Heavyweight Title Tournament. We had those guys in, and Rich was referring to earlier. We had Mikey Nichols, who just left his developmental. He was Nick Mitchell of the TM51. He wrestled Finn Balor. Fergal Devitt. So we were fortunate. We got to get some really cool international competitors come through on Dave Marquez's dime.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yep. So we talked last week at length about King Kong Bundy and his passing. News attached to that. Apparently, King Kong Bundy was a bit of a crazy cat lady. He had 10 cats. That he was a cat lover. And unfortunately, with his passing, he's left 10 cats without owners. So Perfect, P-U-R-R-F-E-C-T, Perfect Angels Cat Rescue is looking to do adoptions out in the southern New Jersey area. So if you're a cat fan and you like cats, I would highly recommend checking out their site. You might be, and they're actually saying
that'd be pretty cool.
I would love to own one of King Kong Bundy's cats.
They're actually saying like this cat, this is so and so. His daddy was former wrestling legend King Kong Bundy, who passed suddenly. He's now sad and left without a home. Would you be one of the wrestling heroes to adopt? So you know. If you're in that area, I don't know if they're going to allow out of state, but if you're listening to us on the stream and you're a fan of cats, you know, that's one thing. People have one or two cats. Sometimes like, I can take a third cat, no problem. Hey, you might be able to adopt one of King Kong Bundy's cats and do a deal and get some of these animals out of the rescues and back into forever homes. So a little, hopefully there's some happiness on the other side of this sad, the sad story about Bundy passing the way he did. Another end of an era. WWE is selling off Titan Tower. They're moving out of the glass building that you can see right off 95. Yeah. They're staying in Stamford, but they've far outgrown the facility. Actually, our friend Matt Dominguez, who used to work there, used to say how jammed everything was in there. So much they spilled over to another facility, which is like the Trax warehouse where they do. But apparently they're looking at they have something set up where it's going to be a much bigger facility to handle all the international business.
That place is huge as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an entire office building, but now they're moving to a much bigger place.
You can't miss it. It's cool when you go on 95. Yeah. You see the big, huge glass building with the logo and the flag.
I know it's always been such an iconic thing, my life to drive
down.
Yeah,
like
literally, I don't care how much of a market makes you seem like every time I drive by. Hey, look,
exactly. Take a picture.
You're in a car full of wrestlers, they don't know exactly where it is, but you still look at that WWE logo. Not anymore.
No,
that's too bad.
No, it won't be right off the highway. I think it's going to be. It sounds like it's going to certainly be a bit off the beaten path, but still in Stamford and still just a much bigger facility to handle the fact that now, I mean, they were in that building for the 80s into the 90s. Now they're a global business. They were an international business. They are now a global business, and they handle a lot more just international dealings. So they need more room for all of their work. Upcoming, pretty big deal in a month or two, June 7th and June 8th will be Joe Bruin's New England Fan Fest, and we will have Joe in one of these weeks leading up to it. So maybe in May, I was talking to him, have him come in to talk a bit about it. But as part of this is also the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. But part of the Fan Fest, it's always great. They bring in a ton of different wrestling names. So if you're a fan, it gives you an opportunity to meet a ton of people, get a ton of autographs, and because of the way that the flow of traffic is with it, while there's a lot of fans, it's never like one of those autograph conventions where you get hustled by somebody, you get a minute to see them, and then you get shuffled on. You pay whatever obscene amount to get an autograph, and then get shuffled away and don't even get a minute to talk to them. Most of the wrestlers are at small vendor tables, and you might wait in line to talk to them. But I mean, I've had we've gone and we've set up tables for different stuff we've done, and then we've put people, all right, man the table, we're going to go and walk around, and I was just for 30 minutes talking music with Hillbilly Jim, and when out of nowhere Coco Beware jumps on his table and starts singing Pile Driver. Marty Jannetty was trying to pick up on Lucy Santana. Remember that year? So sure, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's because it's handled on the level it is, meaning it's not to put any shine that it's not a great fan fest, but it's not handled like a giant comic book convention. It's a grassroots. It started very grassroots. Joe Bruin started it in a VFW hall, or it was the Sons of Portugal.
Yeah, some Portuguese little hall in East Providence. But the guests this year, they do have a feature list of guests, and it's basically you can get a photo op with the Four Horsemen minus Ric Flair, and one of them is a little kind of meh, but you can Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and J.J. Dillon. So basically that's the lineup of the best Four Horsemen minus Flair and Paul Roma. Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant will be there. You want to talk about a guy, if you're a fan of old wrestling, just to meet Boogie Woogie, I was putting together our backdrop at the show that we had done. We're setting up our merch and stuff, and I'm on my down tying my shoe or something. I look up and it's I think 7:30, 8 in the morning. It's ridiculously early, and there's Jimmy Valiant standing over me sipping his cup of coffee. So I stand up and I go, good morning. He's like, Jimmy Valiant, good to meet you. I'm like, yes, I know who you are. Yeah. I used to love Boogie. But then you talk to him, and now Knuckles Nelson has put up about how they met and became friends. And he legit drives and takes trips to Boogie Woogie's training facility and hangs out with him because they're friends now. Because it's just one of those grassroots friendships. So cool. So he's one of those guys, if you're a fan of that era of wrestling, the NWA and Boogie Woogie, he's there and he is dynamite to talk to. Greg Hammer Valentine will be there with Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart doing a rhythm and blues reunion. Kelly will be there this year. Eric Bischoff will be there. Very nice.
Friend of show Alicia Edwards will be there. Tatanka, who is dynamite. He's the man. Another guy who you can talk wrestling with. Super good. Somebody we talked about earlier today, Perry Saturn, will be there. Yep. Perry disappeared for quite some time with major depression based on his head injuries and the head trauma from his concussions. He was missing. But he will be there. And at his table, being there with him will be our friend Paul Richard, the Extreme Enforcer. They're actually both there, and part of it is the whole recognition of the dangers of concussions. So it's great that Perry's going to be able to get back out there and let guys know that, this is a guy who is basically on top of the world. WCW contract, WWE contract, high-profile free agent moves over, with the whole Radicals thing, and ultimately is disappeared with almost nothing because of the head injuries and everything that he was dealing with, and a lot of that was probably from the chair shots and stuff in ECW.
I would say that's pretty good of a guarantee.
Yeah. Excuse me, Vicky Guerrero will be there. Hardcore Harley will be there. Tonga Kid, Jazz, and her husband Rodney Mack.
I've recently become friends with Rodney Mack on Facebook.
Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't know they were still married. He talks about it all the time.
He's one of those guys who, you listen to...
White Boy Challenge.
Yeah, you listen to Bruce Pritchard talk about him. He was, when he was on the Indies, he was Red Dog Bernard. And he was so big on wanting to be another version of the Junkyard Dog that he really never, that was always in the back of his mind, even when he was doing the Rodney Mack thing. And he just never really embraced something other than that. But he had all the tools. The guy was a big dude. He was imposing. I thought the White Boy Challenge was tremendous. especially when it was like Kenny Phoenix.
Yeah, being 16 years old, getting the bag beat out of you by Rodney Mack, and then going to school the next day.
You're 18, right?
Yeah,
no, you're 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine being on Sunday Night Heat on MTV.
The night that they did the White Boy Challenge, that was Raw. That was Monday Night
I think
Raw.
it might have been Gold Dust he wrestled on.
Yeah, it was Monday Night Raw because I was there in Pennsylvania that night.
Go to school the next day.
Yeah. Tony Atlas will be there as usual. Members of Men on a Mission, Sir Mo and Oscar. Evan Courageous.
The hell?
The worst of 3 count, Evan Courageous. Dangerous Danny Davis, another wrestler, if you will.
Yeah. He was a good one. I like Danny Davis.
You ever meet him?
No.
Yeah, that's why you're saying. That's why you're saying he's one of your favorites.
Nasty Boy Jerry Saggs will be there.
Where's Brian Knobs?
Huh?
Where's Brian Knobs?
I don't know. It's Jerry Saggs. Gary Michael Capetta will be there. And here's an NWA name that I think is awesome is being announced for it. The Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez.
Wow.
And it's sad. I heard at one point in Jersey he was working as a janitor somewhere at a school, and somebody but that was a dude. I mean, remember when he was tagging with Rick Rude? They were the world tag champs. They were nasty. He was one of those guys I just because he'd come through Texas and you'd see him. He was a badass, and he wasn't like. He didn't seem as imposing physically like Terry Gordy did, but he had that big guy who could bump around thing. And he was just always like, what a good heel. So I think that's awesome. That's one of those obscure like Joe Bruin names as far as a lot of the general fans who won't know who he is, but they're diehard wrestling fans who are going to be like, freaking Manny Fernandez, that's awesome. So, and he's the true Raging Bull, not the
Ragging Bull.
Not the Ragging Bull. As part of that, the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame Class 2019 has been announced. I'm not going to go through everybody involved because there's some people who are peripheral. I'm talking about the brotherhood of people who have been in wrestling, not so much people who have been like PR people or whatever, who Joe has also brought in. But good friend of ours, Antonio the Promise Thomas, is being inducted. It's funny because I remember when he had his first match. There are guys who I was in for a handful of years and saw their first matches. They had a handful of their first matches in my ring, and so Antonio the Promise Thomas, guy had a bit of a small deal with WWE. Did really well in the developmental. The Heartthrobs was huge in the developmentals there for them. His partner Romeo Roselli is also being inducted. When they got up to the main roster, it just was a gimmick that didn't quite click with the fans. But they, they
got some TV time.
Yeah, their first match was with Tajiri and
Regal?
Steven Regal. Yeah, William Regal. Jeff Katz, who was very involved with Tony Rumble in the running of Century Wrestling Alliance, NWA, knowing in the early days. Jeff Katz was he's one of the guys I'll bring up who was a promoter. But Jeff was so involved. I mean, he was basically the TV producer for Rumble. And again, if there's more stories about Jeff Katz, it's somebody who Rich Palladino could certainly talk. Unfortunately, we don't have it archived, but if you go back to that episode, you could definitely hear more about Jeff Katz. Kid USA, Jay Gillette, somebody we brought up earlier, is being inducted. The last two I'm going to bring up are especially personal for me. One, because of my relationship with him, and two, because as a promoter and matchmaker, my relationship with that person. First one is, and it's hard to believe, Revolution Chris Venom is being Venom along with Triplicious were like the two guys who I watched as basically backyard / side yarders, and they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to do this right," and started training with myself and Draven Vinny Ratte when we were the Damned, and he blew it out of the water right off the bat. Really got good. After a couple years, he came to me and said, "Hey, I want to expand my horizons. I did a camp with Bob Evans. I want to go with him. I think there's some stuff he can teach me that I have more to learn." And I said, "Go for it, man." And that's kind of like the rest was history. The foundation I laid with him, and then what Bob built on top of it, and Chris Venom went from being a solid wrestler to a hell of a ring general. And to me, one of my favorite moments is just. He hadn't had matches in years, and we had that Constitution State Wrestling show. And by the way, people not being able to make it, we reshuffled the card, and said, "Hey, Venom, you're wrestling Trigger." And it was like an old feud that we'd always in the days done. And they went back, and it had been like no time had been lost. And they tore the roof down, and
Definitely.
you got to manage Trigger in that match, and you got to be firsthand for it. So to see my two kids go out there and tear it up, and to know that Venom's the first of guys that, you know, there's only a handful of them, but, you know, one of the guys that I trained is now being in the Hall of the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's pretty cool. The other person who was just announced in the last week, and I love who they have inducting her, is Mistress Belmont. She's being inducted by Sean Gorman, the manager of Champions. So his induction speech should be nothing short of brilliant, but we were looking for an extra girl on the World Women's Wrestling shows we were on. We had a spot short. We needed somebody. And as I would often do, I reached out to Nikki Rocks and said, Nikki, who do we have? And Nikki was one of our top girls at the time. And she said, well, you know, we're a little, you know, we've got a lot of girls on the show, but she goes, Steve Bradley's got this girl who's on his WFA shows that they call Slave Girl. She's got kind of an interesting look. She's green as grass, but she's a good kid. She listens. And I'm like, well, you know, you feel comfortable with her? And she goes, oh, absolutely. All right, then, you know, so Nikki brought her in for the show. And the first show, it's funny because she was so quiet and shy and timid. Not at ringside. I mean, we definitely booked her in a strong position for it, protected her because she was green. But it's funny to see how far she's come in those years. That was, you know, 2005, 2006 maybe. And she was very, you know, this young lady with blue hair comes in and, you know, definitely looks the part as far as, but we, you know, decided Slave Girl wasn't the name. And she got back to us later and wanted to be Mistress Belmont, with the Belmont being tied into Simon Belmont from the cat. She's a gamer. And the whole Castlevania, Simon Belmont is the hero. So she decided she wanted to go with that. And my partner at the time says, wow, that sounds like she's one of those high-class broads from, like, Boston, Mistress Belmont. And I was like, no, and here we are later, except that she now often works as the Widow Belmont, which is a great transition for what she's gone through personally and how she brought it to the ring. I couldn't be more pleased because this is a woman who started off as she would admit, green as grass, and we brought her to the point where within 3 years she was main eventing our shows.
In a cage.
We built to a cage match between her and Alicia Edwards for the World Women's Wrestling Championship, and it wasn't a great women's cage match. It was a great cage match. It was legit held up. It was as good as any men's cage match we ever put on.
Absolutely.
And just, you know, pleased as punch that, you know, and I'm like so happy for her. I know she's, I'm sure she's super honored, probably knowing her, feeling almost like it's an undeserved honor, but it's certainly deserved. Her influence when she comes around now, the way that the girls in the locker rooms who know her look up to her, she is really held up on a higher standard than I think she realizes. When some of those girls get to work with her, it's like, they're like, I'm working with Belmont. Holy crap. Like, it's like a huge deal to them because they recognize what she's done over her time. And she's just another one of those people who keeps that legacy of Steve Bradley, much like, you know, Steve Bradley had a lot of influence on early Chris Venom. You know, he was working those WFA shows. Antonio the Promise Thomas had, so here you go. Another bunch of people, that ongoing discussion we talk about those influences of Steve Bradley rippling through New England.
Always.
There's some more, you know. So,
Always, yeah.
So congratulations to those new inductees in a couple months joining the crowd. You know, it's cool. It's you know, I had somebody once say, well, it's, you know, it's just, you know, whoever Joe Bruin decides to put in there, right? And while it might be on a national level, the WWE Hall of Fame is just who one man, Vince McMahon, decides to put in there. It's not like the Baseball Hall of Fame where you have to have so many votes or whatever. So it's an honor to be recognized, and it's an honor, especially when you're being spoken about in the same sentences as guys like Tito Santana, Rick Martel. My class was Tito Santana, Rick Martel, Chief Jay Strongbow, Samu. I mean, those are guys who I've either gone to war with or watched growing up or sat in locker rooms with and sat under the learning tree with. So to be even on one event spoken about in the same sentence as them, it's like an honor.
Plus the guy that inducted you is awesome. So
I forgot about that. Yeah. Even though he called me a S-bag in front of the...
I figured a room full of the boys say the word S-bag and it would get a pop. So it worked. But, so, quick funny story. Joe Bruin sends me a message about a month ago
Did it have 500 gifts that locked your phone up? Because that's what happened when I asked him to give me information about the Fan Fest.
So he sends me a message, and I'm like, oh, man, I wonder if he's going to ask, like, you know.
Could I induct you, Rich Bass?
Is he going to, like, put me in the Hall of Fame? Like, this is going to be awesome. And he asked me if I wanted to work the event and, like, be, like, a handler of, like, the stars and, like, and get paid to do it. So
it's still not a bad deal.
Yeah, I guess I'll do that. I won't get inducted to the Hall of Fame, but.
Maybe that will push you.
I'll tweet you. Hey, maybe it's the beginning of a good relationship. Then you'll be favorable to him, and you'll get one of those.
Yeah, I'd rather just get in on my own merit.
But anyway, I was super psyched to hear that was like this week when they talked about her getting inducted, and I was psyched, and to go and see that Venom was also being inducted was just super cool. So we talked about this last week, but coming up in a couple weeks is NXT TakeOver. Obviously, the big news with Tommaso Ciampa having to be stripped of the title due to injury. Word has it that his surgery went, in the words of the doctor, perfect. Not just great, but perfect. Although the doctor did say, I've never seen somebody go from major surgery to major surgery to major surgery the way he has. And that's been the one thing, for those who don't know Tommaso's had a ton of injuries over his career, and it's always been just before this happened as he was in in his spotlight. But it was always like just on the way to a spotlight situation, like he'd blow his knee out or he'd tear his pec. Like he had the injury where he was, they were doing the whole thing with him and Gargano with DIY, and he was injured and on the shelf for 6-8 months. Unfortunately, now it's as NXT champion, he goes out with this neck injury. So with any luck, he'll be able to come back. But there's some question when you have that spinal fusion. Think about. Edge had it done, and he wrestled for a bunch more years. But then, it may not have been the best idea. So hopefully, I don't want to see anybody. I like to see people be able to call their own shot when they're done. Especially a guy who is, worked as hard as he has over the years to get where he is. Dealt with the injury, much like when we talk about Hansen, how many injuries he dealt with, and to get himself to where he is, and put in through their own sweat and hard work. You hate to see somebody not be able to call their own shot as to when it's over. So I certainly don't hope that's going to happen. Taking his place in that match for the NXT Championship will be Adam Cole. 2 out of 3 falls match. Yeah. So him and Johnny Gargano, that match it'll be awesome. I know that's one that the Indie-rific fan would love to see, and the NXT fans will be huge on. 4-way for the Women's Championship: Shayna Baszler versus Kairi Sane versus Io Shirai versus Bianca Belair. North American Championship: Velveteen Dream defends against Matt Riddle. NXT Tag Champions: the War Raiders take on Ricochet and Aleister Black. And the WWE UK Championship, or the NXT UK Championship, will be on the line as Pete Dunne defends against Walter. We talked last week, we ran over the already huge WrestleMania 35 card. Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair. Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins. Triple H versus Batista. AJ Styles versus Randy Orton. The Miz versus Shane McMahon. Buddy Murphy will defend the Cruiserweight Championship. We talked about Kurt Angle would be handpicking an opponent for his retirement match.
Yeah,
and everybody was looking forward to something big, and he picks Baron Corbin. And the world of wrestling fans let out a collective fart. It was like...
Even Kurt Angle's wife went on Twitter and got caught in subtweets taking a dump on it.
Yeah. And
she had to go back and delete it and retract everything. But
screenshots! Angle's excuse was because he made his life a living hell.
Yeah.
While he was general manager.
So there's some serious hope, and I don't know why you wouldn't build up a marquee match and announce it. There's hope that because the first match of John Cena's WWE career was against Angle, that they would maybe do something where he just right off the bat, boom, 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 taps out Baron Corbin, is ready to, and then Cena comes out and says, you don't end a career like that.
Yeah.
You started my career. Let me be your last.
But why bury Corbin in the process?
Because who cares about Corbin? But I mean, he's honestly. I mean,
right. I agree.
I'd rather bury him. My thing would be, if you're going to do something like that, why not? If you said built it up, John Cena's first match was against Kurt Angle, and you show the promo, hey, you got it, kid, that whole thing. Now he's going to choose Cena to be his last match. That's instantly like, man, Cena's not wrestling regularly. He's coming in against Kurt Angle. It's an attraction. There's a reason behind it. There's emotion. That's certainly a bigger seller than Kurt Angle.
People want to see John Cena now.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't want him before. Now people want him to come back.
Asuka is going to defend the SmackDown Women's Championship against the winner of a 4-way. That'll happen. They've been playing one of the big angles right now is the Daniel Bryan. Who will face him? It looks like it's going to be Kofi Kingston, but they're totally teasing it. They did this past week. They did the gauntlet match. No wrestler has ever started a gauntlet match on one of the Raw or SmackDown. This is one of the facts that somebody had posted up and gone all the way through. It's always been they've lost to the last guy. They've never gone through. So Kofi goes through 5 guys, wrestles for 55 minutes on national TV, wins. They have announced him as getting the title match at WrestleMania. They have the New Day run out. They're celebrating. The crowd's going like crazy. The Kofi chants are outrageous. Vince McMahon comes out and says, "Oh, you'll have that match if you beat your next opponent," which ends up being Daniel Bryan, and they tear it up. Kofi, I was wondering if Kofi may have gotten rattled on. There was one bump he took where he went down weird on his head, and then the next thing he does was like a weird springboard, double spring, and it didn't look right. Like it looked like it was supposed to be like an attempt at a double springboard body press that Daniel Bryan like sidesteps. It just looked bizarre, and I was wondering if maybe he was a little out of it. But great match. The crowd's going ape, and then Daniel Bryan ends up winning the match, and the crowd's like BS about it. And they've since done the New Day have done like tweets about like Xavier Woods straight out was like, "All right, I see where you are. Thanks for everything, Vince McMahon, but your treatment of us and of Kofi is making me reconsider where I go." Like alluding to if you're going to hold us down, then we'll leave.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think
it's all part of it.
I'm sure I absolutely believe it's all part of it. But it's interesting because 3 months ago, people like New Day. They like Kofi Kingston. They were not chanting Kofi like they are now.
Right.
So, like, if they build to this and Kofi gets his WrestleMania match and wins the title, it's like, talk about a great 3-month build. Like, it's just not something that you would have expected. 4 or 5 months, if you'd said, "Oh, Kofi's going to wrestle for the title at WrestleMania," I'd have been like, "I'd love to see it. I love Kofi. Good dude. Great wrestler.
A top guy.
But that's awesome." And he's already been a top guy with New Day, but not that upper echelon. One title win. He wins the title at WrestleMania. He's now forever. He's been a world champion, and there's some rumor that they may have him win that, and then within a week or so, New Day wins the tag titles, just to have that faction be for a short run, be like kind of like what they did with like the Hart Foundation, where they the big version of the Hart Foundation had all those titles. Yeah. It's always cool when you have a faction that wins everything. So that's a big story with the Raw situation, and there's still matches to be announced. We were talking about them: the men's Battle Royal, Andre the Giant, the Battle Royal, the women's Andre the Giant Battle Royal. You're looking at like could be 15 to 17 matches when it's all said and done, which is pretty ridiculous.
I need a nap in the middle of it.
Yeah. Especially if the food's good. I mean, we always bring good food for it. We're gonna be like. Well, that's if you. I mean, we were talking about that. Now you're. Well, it's one of the shows we'll talk about in a few minutes. We will be. We said in 2 weeks, Rich won't be here because he'll be actually away, and we talked about it last week. What we were alluding to is that he'll be heading down to New Jersey, Rahway, New Jersey, where he will be part of the Chaotic Wrestling show, Chaos for Connor, and Chaos for Connor's Cure. Connor's Cure is one of the big cancer research charities that the WWE supports. Connor Mickelson, they've had him on. You've seen him before on the show.
Hall of Famer, brother.
Yeah, and Chaotic Wrestling gets to be part of the fundraiser in WrestleMania weekend, right near WrestleMania, to do this. And so it's a huge opportunity, and obviously Rich is heading down there. So as I said, we'll work on getting a remote where he can. We'll have him call and we'll talk a bit about maybe from the ride. I don't know who your riding crew is, but it might be a fun ride to.
I think it might just be my girlfriend.
You're not gonna go.
No, her sister lives in the Bronx. So we might go early, like the day before. So
gotcha.
We'll figure it out.
Okay, cool.
But we'll do something.
Yeah, we'll definitely work on getting that. One of the other little controversies around WWE right now is. A lot of fans have been vocal about Roman Reigns' portrayal since returning from his battle with leukemia. It's less that he's publicizing it. Have you noticed his logo, the bottom of the Roman Reigns logo, now it's orange, which is leukemia awareness, but it actually crosses over to make the ribbon of so his chest, which used to be the double R, now the bottom of it loops in, so it's like a ribbon.
Yeah.
So that's not, but they're making a big deal because his T-shirts that he's selling with that have the profits go to him and the company. There is no donation to leukemia research. So people have been like, it's kind of sleazy that you're So that's been something I've been hearing people.
Yeah, that was pretty much right away too.
Crap
right
and
off
moan
the
about
bat, they were noticing that, and
and I had brought up, they've donated. They donate to Connor's Cure. They donate to Gloria Gemma, not Gloria Gemma,
Susan
Komen, yeah. Which again, that's questionable as well because their administrative fees, you have people getting figures for salaries.
When you have the CEO making six figures, what kind of a charity are you really?
I think it's 7 figures. I think it's over $1 million.
That's ridiculous. To do what?
Yeah, right. And I mean, and that's coming from donations. So if you make $10 million in donate, which they make more than that, but $10 million in donations in a year, a tenth of that money is going to your CEO. Yeah. That's. So I mean, it was. I was saying, well, they definitely donate to, and then I said, Susan G. Komen was probably a bad example, but they've definitely been on top of cancer awareness. At least they've been trying to promote that, and so that's something I've been hearing from people mumbling lately. Upcoming events. Thursdays, XWA at the Event Center on Bridle Ave in West Warwick, Rhode Island, where you will probably see either one of these fine gentlemen refereeing. Tonight, XWA
DTA
presents DTA. Don't trust anybody at the XWA Event Center in West Warwick. Santino Marella tags up with your teacher Matt Stryker to take on Richard Holiday and King Leon VI. Again, I love matches that are kind of outlandish, goofy, big personalities, and you've got 4 guys with huge personalities, and I think it's going to be a good time. JT Dunn defends the XWA Championships against Sammy Guevara. That's going to be a hell of a match. There's no question about that. Again, another great match. Anthony Henry goes one-on-one with his former tag partner and tag team champion partner, James Drake, the former workhorseman. The Firebrand Championship will be on the line. Riot Kellen Thomas defends against Trigger the OG, and that's why you will not be refereeing because you'll be managing.
Correct.
So you'll be in that. Tag team championships are on the line as Bones of Steel defend against Bear Country. Could be a long, long night for Bones of Steel because Bear Country are beasts.
I'd imagine so.
Sent to Slaughter, Dan Moff and Sean Donovan will take on the Ugly Ducklings. Could be another long night for the Ugly Ducklings. They're a pretty cagey little tag team, but
it'll be a great match, though. But
Moff and Donovan are brutal. Sent to Slaughter is a pretty accurate name. March 29th, Chaotic Wrestling will be in Woburn, Mass. at the Elks Lodge with Fallout from Cold Fury. And as we said, April 6th in Rahway, New Jersey, Chaos for Connor's Cure. April 20th, Providence Wrestle Party returns to the Black Box Theater on Empire Street in Providence, and it is free if you have a Brown or RISD ID. And the newly crowned Providence champion, Ashley Vox, will defend her title. So we certainly...
What wrestling tomorrow?
What wrestling? I always forget. I have it on the list, but we talked about it. So what wrestling is tomorrow? We've talked about it. We have obviously one of the big matches on it. The biggest match on it will be Danny Moff taking on AR Fox. This will be at FET. For the first ever What champion to be crowned. There will be a scramble match between JT Dunn, Pinky Sanchez, and Casey Navarro, and a fourth person to be decided in a 4-way scramble, I believe, to name who will be that fourth person. The winner of that match will be the number 1 contender. We talked about former guest of the show, Bullet Joe, taking on Jimmy Lloyd from Combat Zone Wrestling. So it'll be a guy who has done some comedy midget matches, but mostly just hard-nosed wrestling in the Bullet, taking on a deathmatch wrestler. So it should be very interesting.
Hard-hitting.
Yeah, that'll be. And yeah, Bullet's quite a little striker.
Oh, yeah, he's a stiff prick.
Yeah. So, it should be. And there's going to be, a lot of other great action on that show. So certainly, support independent wrestling. We got a lot of great wrestling in the area now, and it is only getting better in the reputable places. Do do your research. I will say that. Take a look at who's running, who's on the shows, because there are still shows in the area that you could bring your 8-year-old and he probably will have fun. But it's not going to be a professional wrestling show. It's going to be a hobby show. It's going to be play wrestling. We try to highlight the companies that are putting on the bigger shows in the area, the better shows, with the credible talent. That's why we really put our time focusing on them, because we want people to, if you're a listener, you're spinning the dials and you find our show and you're hearing about wrestling, we want to make sure that you're going to get a great experience. You're going to get the best pro wrestling that's available on the independent level. So we went long, I think they're on spring break or something, because there's no kids in the school. Our follow-up show didn't show up. I think students are on vacay. So I got to throw this in real quick. 101.1 FM, WBRU LP, WFO LP, WVVX LP, Providence, BSRlive.com on the internet streaming, Brown Student Community Radio, serving the curious listener.
I know. Let's go. You're going to make me late for my hair appointment.
Ooh. That one hair needs to...
I know. I got to trim my one hair. My tuft in the front needs to get
So we're going to end it off with... we're going to go totally not PC with our show ending song. It's one of the greatest wrestling songs ever written. And I'm just going to leave it at that, because it really doesn't need any more intro than that. So we'll catch you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
And hopefully this will play, because it's not now.
Oh, no.
It is. It says it's playing.
I just want to thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks, Jack.
It was an honor to be here.
For Jack Hill, who are, again, always welcome to come in. Great guest today. I love having the kind of conversation where we can just kind of ramble about different stuff. And have a good show tonight, guys.
Thanks.
So now that I've put up the right channel, not the tape channel, here's the best wrestling song of all time.
Back when I was a kid, life was going swell, till something happened, blew everything to hell. That night my daddy stumbled in, all pale and weak, said a woman up the block just gave birth to a geek. Mom said, sell it to the circus. What the heck?